Tom Marazzo. Tom Marazzo?
Marazzo.
Marazzo. Tom, it is such a pleasure to have you here. Super excited to have you here. I just want to start by saying that I personally, I don't know if I'm a changed person, but I've certainly changed the direction at which I look at my government and many other things after 2020. Who were you before 2020, and what was the catalyst that brought you to where you are today?
Oh, wow. That's an interesting question because, after 2020, things in my life, my whole world perspective greatly became modified. And, I, like many other Canadians out there, you could joke and say, oh, I'm a recovering liberal. I'm not going to watch. I keep hitting the mic.
You can lift it up.
I'm a recovering liberal. Like I've heard a lot of people say that, right? And I used to say that, I'm more of a centrist, but if really you held a gun to my head and you said, you've got to pick either liberal or conservative, you get one vote, what's it going to be? I probably would have gone to the liberal side. And, like many people in about 2020, I wasn't a big fan of Trump. I just wasn't a big fan because I was looking at the conduct of his behavior. It just didn't seem professional. Okay. There's a case where, he made fun of a disabled reporter. Mm-hmm. Some of the language that he'd been caught using, I just didn't like his conduct. I thought it was very juvenile for a president. For a guy who has the launch codes, you really shouldn't be conducting yourself this way, right?
Totally.
Put that all aside. Let's fast forward to 2024. I absolutely identify as somebody who has conservative values. There is no such thing as the Liberal Party anymore. I'm not entirely sure that there is a conservative party either.
Was there ever?
I don't think so. I kind of view it as the uniparty, truthfully. I'm very hopeful that Trump will get back in. I am hopeful of this. And, I don't know who's going to take over this country. And I saw a really interesting view yesterday, a video, a guy was saying like, look, if there's an election in Canada and Trudeau wins, it still sucks. Our life continues to suck. And there's nothing you can do about that. But if the Conservatives win, Pierre Poilievre takes over, at least you've got a shot at change. But if it doesn't change, if he just maintains the same steady course, you're no worse off than you are right now.
100%.
So give the Conservatives a chance. And strangely enough, that's not a bad argument, to be perfectly blunt. But because right now I've said on social media that I'm politically homeless. So to come back to your original question, I started off looking at the view from just slightly more of a liberal view, where I think, be responsible with people's tax dollars, get out of their homes, definitely get out of their bedrooms. I wasn't, a gun lobby guy. I just thought, have a gun, be responsible. But I don't think people should have open carry in Canada. I think if you're down, government should be an avenue to get back up on your feet. But I don't think that you should sell your soul just because you got some help from the government. Mm-hmm. So, I was kind of really down the middle. I wanted to take the best of both worlds in terms of government. I left the military in 2015. I went back to school. I did a 4-year degree in software, and I got out right away and I became a teacher at Georgian College in Barrie. And so I kind of knew that for the rest of my life, my professional career, I wanted to just go back into some form of public service, because that's really what education to me was public service. And then, everything was great. Like I think I was really on a professional level, the happiest I'd ever been when I was a teacher at a college. It was a lot of fun. I was excited to go and do that every day. And then COVID hit. And then, did you guys ever see the movies, any of the Zeitgeist movies, Peter Joseph?
No.
Okay.
I can't say I have.
And I've been asked this many times.
Right. They're worth watching. There's 3 that are the main ones, and they put a 4th one out, which is a complete departure from the original 3. So the first Zeitgeist movie was really in 2007, I think, was the first time I intuitively knew there was something wrong with government, with society, the way the structure of the world actually worked. That really articulated that suspicion that I had. So I kind of carried that through for the rest of my military career. And then, I had the 4 years of the software degree. I start teaching, everything's fine. But the day I heard that there was going to be the first lockdown, everything that I learned in 2007 with that, everything came like right to my doorstep. And so I wasn't fooled for a minute. I didn't believe even on the first day of hearing about COVID that this was a deadly virus. I didn't think this was from day one. And I felt mentally prepared. Now, there's a big component of the second and third movie of the Zeitgeist movies. They talk about the banking industry. Mm-hmm. So in my mind, I was always mentally preparing for a complete collapse of the economic system in all the first world countries of the world. So I knew that there was something out there on the edge. Like this mathematically, I have a master's degree in business. So I understand, economics, finance, and all that stuff. So, mathematically, our system of finance must collapse. Like that's a mathematical certainty. If we forget crypto, we forget blockchain, we just stay with this fiat currency system, this system must mathematically collapse. So mentally, I was always prepared. In the back of my mind, I'm always thinking, okay, how are you and your family protected from certain societal events? So when COVID came along, it actually sped up my timeline. I thought this was going to be much further into the future. COVID really advanced the planning that I needed to do. So when it did happen, I immediately started making contingency plans, which is what the military taught me to do. So to say that I was, doing a full military planning cycle on what to do, not accurate, because with the military, you have a known adversary. Okay, you've got, let's say, the Germans, the Japanese, the Taliban. You've got an adversary who has tactics, training, in procedures. They have a doctrine that they follow. Well, in this case, I don't know who my adversary was. I had no idea who was orchestrating this pandemic. And so it's really hard to plan when you don't you can't even identify who your adversary is. And if you try to say that it's your government, if you try to speak those words to your friends, they're just looking at you like you've got six heads. Mm-hmm. So how do you make arrangements for an adversary that you don't even know anything about them, and you have no allies? You don't have a fire team partner with you in this. And I had spoken to a few friends I'd known, almost my whole career. None of them wanted to have anything to do with these conversations.
Why do you think that is? What is that?
They bought into the fear. And look at the fear that the media was pumping into people.
Yeah, fear's a good word, and that's the word I use.
Yeah.
But why?
It isolated people. It puts you in your home to the point where, you don't have to convince people, or you don't have to force people to stay in their home and to be isolated from other families and your own family. All you have to do is give them a justification why they will self-imprison themselves.
And why was this? They were trying to...
Because if you communicate with other people and share your suspicions and your ideas, maybe your beliefs, mm-hmm. then you can unify. You can push back.
Right.
You can get organized, and then you can protect yourself.
Divided they fall sort of thing.
Yes. And I think that's the whole point. I mean, the media constantly, every day, it started off with, there was 10 cases of COVID, 10 confirmed cases. And then there was 20. Then it was 200. Then it was 2,000. Then it was 10,000 cases. It's like, okay, use your brain. What's a case? Oh, well, you tested positive. Okay. What does that mean? Talk to me about actual hospitalizations, talk to me about intensive care units, talk to me about actual real serious cases. And then I want you to compare that to influenza. Because the COVID and influenza both actually had very relatively the same statistics. I think influenza had, I think it's 0.004% chance of you become a fatality, and COVID was 0.003 or some ridiculous number, like very low, like per population. It was very, very low.
So less.
Much less. Well, okay, I can't say much less.
Or
but,
let's say almost even.
yeah, but if you, almost even, yeah, but if you look at the actual, like they were using the case count to terrorize the neighborhood. So everything coming out of the anchorman's mouth was just being gobbled up by people that didn't question it, because the fear and the anxiety of leaving your house. And of course they were really great, very masterful, actually, convincing people that, they were going to kill your grandmother. You're going to kill your grandfather. Like, you're a threat to
Big
the
time,
survival
man.
of
Yeah.
your own family members. So people voluntarily went inside, and when you're bored and you've got nothing to do and you're scared about something, it's human nature to find information. Okay, so when you see people, they come under fear. The eyes get big, right? The adrenaline pumps. But your eyes get big, your pupils will open up so that you can take in more information, right? And it's no different than people sat there in front of their TVs or their phones and they were taking in information. Who was providing the information? It was the liberal funded media. And I don't want to say just the liberals, because you got to remember, most of the premiers across Canada and all the provinces were all conservative. And the media was just building this narrative, and it was being supported by every level of government in this country.
Was it happening in the United States at the same time? I mean, it was, right?
It was.
And Europe and wherever?
Yes, it was. Every first world country. It's interesting, because if you look at the comparison between the first world countries and maybe poorer third world countries, there was a difference. Not a huge difference, but I'll give it India as an example. They actually took one of their states. They have either states or provinces in India. They have a population of 1.4 billion people. And one of their states or provinces actually gave out ivermectin and vitamin packs to their population. And they saw an amazing recovery from COVID. Like, they didn't have nearly the same problems. Whereas you take North America, we locked everybody down. We ignored ivermectin and all the other protocols that go along with ivermectin that were, proven to be effective. And you saw other places, though, like Florida, where they did initially lock down. There was masks, and then after the first sort of cycle of that, they said, "We're not doing this masking. It doesn't work." I mean, it says on the side of the box that, for a mask, it actually says on the side not to be used to stop viral transmission. It says that on the box, but nobody ever bothered to look at the box. People were just so full of fear that they went along with whatever the anchorman told them. And that was, to me, really difficult, because I learned in that first year of COVID that the people that I believed, in the 1930s and 40s in Germany, who would have resisted the Nazi occupation, would have been freedom fighters, would have stood up against that, actually turned out to be people that would have absolutely 100% collaborated with the Germans.
100%.
And then the people out there that were not really, like, just unassuming people, they were the ones who stood up in Canada. They were the ones who I would have thought, no, you would have been a collaborator with the Nazi. Turns out to be, no, they were fierce freedom fighters, and were not going to be told what to do with their bodies by the government. So it was a big surprise. And I can't sort of narrow down a demographic of, like, okay, you're a blue collar worker or you're a PhD. You can't really narrow it down. Everybody was individually different. And I had this one working theory that I can't test or prove, but it seemed to me that everybody who had some form of a childhood trauma and grew up and learned not to trust adults were very resistant to the propaganda coming from the anchorman. So a lot of people that I met, I remember telling this to a retired cop.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, and I said this to a retired OPP officer. He's like, "Why do you think some people do it and some fall for it and some don't?" And I said, "I think it's because there are people that have had that at a very young age learned that they couldn't trust adults. There was an adult who betrayed them somehow or did something to them, where as they grew up, they became very mistrusting of authority." And he's like, "Man, the hair just stood up on the back of my neck." And he admitted to me at that point that he had a lot of childhood trauma. And I've told that to many, many people, and they're all like, "Geez, that's like everybody I know has a story from their childhood," right? Except for two people. Both of those two people were doctors, and it was both of their fathers who had the trauma and talked to their sons about what they believed was going on. So they listened to the fathers. So that's the only two exceptions that I had. But I'm sure I could go out there and find lots of people who have childhood trauma that were willing, they're on their 7th booster by now.
Sure.
So I can't test the theory. But
7 boosters.
yeah, but like why is it though that some people were resistant to it, and why did some people just
That still confuses me, because there's a lot of, some people just don't seem to have fear. They just seem to have ignorance, or to me, I go, "Are you an idiot?" Or, there's a whole whack of reactions I have when I hear some people in the way that they reacted. For me, when all this hit, a lot of what you kind of explained, sort of, I felt the same thing. I wasn't a Trump guy. I'm sitting there going, "What the hell? This is a big joke." It's kind of funny. And now I'm sitting here going, "God, we got to have Trump back." And I'm rooting for Polyev, but at the same time, I'm with you. I'm going, well, it's all the same entity. They all, I don't know, but when it happened, I was afraid. I had this immediate reaction, like, oh, everyone in this country is going to be dead in 3 months, or half the world, or whatever. There's just the way they came out with it, and then just a whole whack of it was just a pattern of false shit, just obvious lies. To me, it seemed so obvious. It just was so obvious that I just didn't understand why the guy next to me didn't feel the same way I did. So are you joking?
Yeah, it was incredible to me, because when they started, sectioning off parts at Walmart and determining what was critical, what was not, and it's like the product is already on the shelf. It's in the same air right now that vital thing over there that you're selling they're all in the same space here. Okay. Yeah. Germs are not that smart where they go, "Oh, that's baby clothing, I can't touch that." Right. And this idea that you could walk into a restaurant, you had to walk there with your mask on, but COVID was so intelligent that it knew that when you sat down to eat your food, you were off.
Hands off.
Yeah.
Hands off. That guy's eating. But you had to put it on to go pee.
Yeah, totally.
Right? That's how smart this virus was.
Yeah, we'd go to set, and it would be the whole crew's wearing masks. Unless you were an actor. If you were an actor and you had to be in front of the camera,
COVID doesn't affect
that. Just as long as the makeup person is wearing a mask, you're groovy. COVID's not here. Don't worry about it.
I did work at the very beginning on a show with Nolan and a couple other guys.
Nolan, there he is.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that.
So, in between shots, you've got your goggles on. And I got to wear this mask, and now my goggles are fogging up. So I got the mask over my nose. And some kid, 20 years old, is getting minimum wage to walk around and harass people to make sure that their masks are on. I'm like,
I think I know that guy.
I'm like, this is a safety issue, man. Like, when they want me, I need to be able to see where I'm going.
Big time.
Anyway, I think that was the last time I worked during COVID until just before Christmas. I worked back on, as SSE, as a SWAT guy. And, there was no mask, no crap. Everybody just was enjoying themselves.
Thank God.
Because I told Nolan, I said, "Nolan, I can't work if at this point after the convoy, I'm like, I can't work if there's going to be testing or masking. I'm just not going to do it. I can't. morally agree to doing something like that. So I'll forgo the money. I need the money, but not that much.
I think I did 400 tests.
Oh my God.
I had,
Yeah,
I
same
had
here.
to have.
Same
Some
here.
were 2 a day.
Yeah.
The 2020 sucked. There was
Yeah.
no work.
Yeah.
Now, having said that, I think that is where I also had this advantage of keeping my common sense and all this in line. Is just that some people weren't affected. I have friends that their lives really weren't affected. They're like web designers or whatever, and they didn't really have to budge much. But my life took a hit, and I wondered, am I going to work again? What am I going to do? So I had to really think through this shit. And just thinking through it, got me here. Fuck, I was going to say something, but
I bet it was important.
yeah.
It'll come back.
Yeah.
But
It'll come back.
Do you notice a difference between generations, like my generation and my son's generation? I know people my age or older where fear plays a huge role.
Yeah.
You know, they're coming to the end of their life, and if they get sick,
Yeah.
it might be sooner than you think. But these kids,
I think that's the lingering fear.
but
That's the one fear that people still seem to have.
but I don't
It's like-
understand the 30 to 35 to 40-year-olds
Yeah.
that are deathly afraid of this thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, beginning of this whole thing. So my teenage son, he's had a very long, extensive medical history. Like he's had 2 open heart surgeries by the time he was 3. Various other things. So in the very beginning of this, I was not concerned for me. I was very concerned for him.
Sure.
So I didn't see him from the beginning of COVID until his birthday a few months later. And because he lives with his mother, and his birthday, I've never missed a birthday with either of my kids. And I was like, I don't care what this is. I'm not going to miss one of my kids' birthdays for this shit. So I drove to his house. I never touched him. I never hugged him, nothing. But I sat on his front lawn. It was raining. It was in the spring. And I sat on an umbrella with a blanket on a lawn chair. But I was like, if this what it takes is going to be what it takes to spend my son's birthday together, then that's what I'm going to do. I don't care. The Army's put me through a hell of a lot worse than just sitting there under an umbrella.
I think so.
Okay, so that was the birthday, but I didn't see him for a couple of months, and that to me was when I think about that, that's a little bit angering to me. But I know other people had it much, much worse than I did. So my fear wasn't anything to do with my own personal safety. It was about my son. And I think that's legitimate because that first strand of COVID was pretty awful to a lot of people. And I'm not sure that, honestly, he might have been able to survive that if he'd have got it. So, you know, that was a scary time. But as this thing mutated, and I have friends, I have a good friend of mine who was a doctor in a hospital. He got fired 3 weeks after I did from his hospital because he wouldn't comply with the mandates, especially the injection, because he's like, it's experimental injection. I'm not going to participate in your experiment. You haven't done proper clinical trials. You can't meet the standard of informed consent. And he was shocked that they were even bringing this to him. That, a lot of medical people were shocked at the conduct of the medical society, or the medical community. But it was the CPSO, the College of Physicians and Surgeons, that were really like the Gestapo going after the doctors. These people are insane.
Now, who's pressuring them?
Government of Canada, Health Canada, the premiers, the public health officers, they're getting all the pressure, but they're not a body that does actual science. They're like a police agency of doctors who commit malfeasance. So, you make an accusation of a doctor, then they come in, they investigate. This was the CPSO getting involved in your treatment, your relationship, your treatment plan between you and your doctor. It's like, you guys don't make new science. You don't create protocols. What you're doing is you're interfering in that relationship between a doctor and the patient. You have no business being in part of the treatment plan. When a doctor commits malfeasance, then you guys get involved and then you investigate that. They were completely subverting the whole system. And so that put a lot of doctors in an enormous amount of pressure and a lot of fear. And a lot of the cowardly doctors in this country, they didn't push back. They're like, whatever, it's on you. I don't care. It's like, didn't protect your patient because you caved to the pressure of the CPSO. And I think that is just a grotesque form of cowardice. But we can get into that all day long, because every institution within our society caved to that same level of pressure and really displayed an enormous amount of institutional cowardice. The police are like probably the worst ones, even the military. And I'm not talking about physical courage that you would face in a physical, violent, kinetic energy type of an event. I'm talking about moral courage. Like every institution in our society collapsed like a McDonald's ashtray, and like on the first day of COVID, it was shocking. I remember being in a meeting during the convoy, and we had 2 doctors in there, and we had a couple of lawyers in there, and we're all in this room. Like there was, I'm an Army guy, software teacher. Then you had retired police or police that resigned, police that were retired. You had doctors, lawyers, nurses, PhDs that were in there, that were scientists. Everybody's in this room. And I stopped the meeting when it was my turn to speak, and I said, I just want to take a minute to reflect on who's in this room right now. So because at the beginning of this pandemic, when things were becoming very tyrannical, the public who were awake to what was going on, all believed that the doctors would put a stop to this. The doctors would intervene, and they didn't. They didn't at all. They didn't protect the public. They didn't abide by informed consent. They just went along with everything they were told to do. So then when the vaccine mandates came out, we thought, okay, the lawyers will put a stop to that. And they didn't. In fact, the lawyers were the ones who wrote the legislation to make it, let's say, legal for the governments to do what they did to people, and all the bylaws and the mandates. That was all written by lawyers. I said, but I'm sitting in a room full of people right now with doctors and lawyers who are pushing back finally. And it's 2 years too late, maybe, but at least you're here. You might be late, but let's just celebrate that you showed up at all. And so we have to recognize that even though that every institution in our society collapsed under the pressure of different government entities, there are individuals in every profession that did push back. And the early adopters got steamrolled. Kristen Nagel, she's a nurse in London, Ontario, not far from here. She got steamrolled. She's twice 2 cases where she's gone to court and the courts have ruled against her. And she's got hundreds of thousands of dollars in judgment against her because she was a nurse. She got fired. She's lost everything. But she was one of the first people who pushed back. Jesus. And the system just destroyed her life. And, she's a wife. She's got kids. And there's many, many examples of that all across this country and in the US, in Europe. So, you look at the power of fear. And I like to believe that, courage is contagious, but so is cowardice.
And now we have a pandemic of fear inside all those institutions.
Yes.
All the people that were not afraid are now outside those institutions, and we can't rely on them.
Yeah, they got pushed out. And I've always encouraged, especially on the policing side, I've always encouraged, the 5% maybe that did push back and hold their ground in their police departments to stay in, fight back, try to climb the ranks and take back your police department. But when you're talking, 7 guys in a police department out of 150 officers, there's only so much you can expect them to do.
Well, a friend of mine out of Hamilton is a police officer, and told me that once the vax was introduced, all the veteran guys that they need were like, well, I don't need this. So
we're out of here.
Yeah. Early retirement.
Retired.
Yep. That's true. I've heard that story all across Canada. Senior people, like doctors, we're hearing about doctors right now. They're looking at it and going, I'm eligible for retirement and I can't function. Like, there are too many patients, not enough hours in a day for even family doctors. They're shutting down clinics all over the place because they just can't keep up with it. My sister's a nurse, and she was telling me this morning, she's supposed to, I think the ratio was about, she'd look at like 4 or 5 critical or, patients on her ward, and she was getting upwards of 8, double what she's supposed to be looking after. And that's in a hospital.
Because of the lack of personnel in the hospital.
Yes, lack. So I'm not a religious person. Like, I don't go to church. If I have to identify with a religion, it's, on the Christian side. I'm a Canadian. That's part of the heritage that I was brought up with. But I expected that the Christian churches were going to actually identify with the story of Jesus or people that were persecuted in the origins of, Christianity. And a lot of them, the vast majority of even the churches collapsed and bought into the fear. And with the few exceptions, Pastor Hildebrand, he's in Elmer. The last time I checked, his church was fined over $270,000. And he actually offered, he said to them, if you reduce the amount that you want me to pay, I'll donate, I think it was $100,000 to some charity. And they said, no, we want the money. So it's not about money, all right? Like, it's not about morality. It was never about protecting people either. It was protecting your own ass in a lot of cases, but it wasn't about protecting the public.
So why did they do this? Why is this a thing? Why did all this happen?
Depopulation. I'm convinced it's depopulation.
Yeah?
Mm-hmm. This whole COVID thing is a smokescreen. World War II, the Germans lined people up, put them in a gas chamber, executed them. In this case, you don't have to put people on trains. They will get in their cars and they'll drive to the lineup outside on the street with a mobile clinic with a shot that's, 50-50, whether it's going to, well, not 50-50, but there's a high chance you're going to be injured from that thing. And you're going to drive yourself and voluntarily roll up your arm. And you're going to take that shot. So you want to depopulate the public. You just got to convince them it's for their own good. And that's what the fear was about. You convince the public that they should participate in this medical experiment to save grandma and grandpa.
Now, at this point, maybe I'm crazy, but it seems like...
Well, if you haven't asked yourself if you're crazy in the last 4 years.
Sometimes I feel like it, depending on who I'm talking to. Mm-hmm. But, they're kind of hiding in plain sight. I mean, and they're pretty visible now. Mm-hmm. At what point are they just going to say, fuck it, and we're going to bust out the train in the gas chamber again?
I don't think they have to be perfectly honest at this point. If you look at the uptake of the actual medical experiment that a lot of people have taken, you don't really have to apply pressure to the public at this point. You just have to wait. You have to wait for this experimental injection to do its thing. So
are there numbers right now that would indicate how many people have been injured by this and how many people may have died?
The last most significant important number that I've seen posted on social media, and I can't verify it, but it was Edward Dowd. He's an American. So I think 57,000 Americans were killed in the 10 years of the Vietnam War. Okay, so that's, all the combat deaths attributed to the Vietnam War over 10 years. Dowd has already come out with the numbers from last year, and he said we're at 61,000 Americans killed in 1 year by the COVID-19 vaccine. And it's only going to get worse when you're looking at, there's roughly about 12 different illnesses that have been, that's the geniusness of this whole thing, is that you can't directly attribute the vaccine to a certain illness. And when doctors are coming out and saying, I've never seen blood clots do that before, or I've never seen this type of disease before. And they try to loosely tie it to a known disease that's out there. They're looking at it and it's like, there's enough wiggle room to say, well, it wasn't the shot. It's something different.
Right.
And statistician fans always say this stupid saying of causation, correlation crap. I don't believe that at all. They're hiding it in plain sight in such a way that it's plausibly deniable. It's like, you can't say that blood clots were caused by that vaccine, can you? It's like, well, no, but I have a theory based on the fact that 50 people have come to my clinic with blood clots this week, right? Mm-hmm. So it is hiding in plain sight. And the worst part is people that are vaccine injured are even defending the medical community. They're defending the vaccine. They're saying, well, it's something else. Like they're refusing to believe that, you know, on Monday when they woke up, they were perfectly healthy. They took a shot and by the afternoon they've got, you know, Epstein-Barr disease.
Right.
But they can't, no, it wasn't the shot.
I think it's to some degree human nature to have an inability to admit a mistake. Mm-hmm. You know, like, I'm so for this. I'll get them all. I'll get 7 boosters. Mm-hmm. And then up until 2 years ago, I don't think personally I've ever known anybody to have ALS. Mm. I know that my wife's grandfather died of ALS. Mm-hmm. I know it exists. But we have 3 friends in the last 2 years diagnosed with ALS. Mm-hmm. And 1 has died and 2 are on their way. Anyway, it's really disturbing.
Yeah, and it just seems like, you know, one of these people in particular, I've discussed this with, and you know, this particular person went from get your vaccine to I'm not sure if what I did was right.
So you admit the mistake after the fact.
Yeah,
like after you get it sick.
Yeah, it's yeah.
There's a lot of that.
Yeah,
there's a lot of remorse for participating in this. The difficulty with that is, you know, you can try to warn people. You know, at the very beginning, a lot of us questioned it and said, I don't think this is a good idea. And I remember saying to somebody like, okay, if I'm wrong, the worst that happens is I get COVID. And now I have natural immunity. I build up antibodies. That's the worst thing that happens. If you're right, you took a vaccine, you're protected from it, right? Everything's good. But if you're wrong, it's undoable. There's nothing you can do after that point if you take that experimental injection that's going to modify your DNA. So, you know, you got to look at the risk analysis of this and you say to somebody like, there's a reason it takes between 7 and 10 years to have a medication approved through Health Canada, like through the processes, through, you know, all the studies. So there was, you know, there's, what do you call them? The clinical trials. You know, there's 3 phases of a clinical trial. There's a reason it takes so many years. You start with animals, you progress, you have a small clinical trial, phase 1, you proceed to 2 if 1 is okay. You proceed to 3 if 2 is okay. But we just actually, for one of the Canadian vaccines that has been pushed, we just finished phase 3 in December, right? The public en masse became part of the phase 3 trial. So what if it doesn't work? You know, what if phase 3 was a failure? Are you going to recall it? Are you going to tell the millions of Canadians that, oh, that thing that we coerced you into doing, oops, sorry.
And we have no recourse.
And you have no recourse because there is a vaccine fund out there, but it was reported recently in the media that the vast majority of the money dedicated to the vaccine injury fund in Canada was actually all absorbed through administration. So what's actually left over for the people is nothing in comparison to what it took to set that all up and to give in terms of salaries and administrative fees and all that stuff.
What was the point of that?
Yeah.
Now, you talked about the blood clot. Have you spoken to anybody very specifically about these very interesting looking blood clots?
I was at a presentation a year and a half ago, not long after the convoy. I was at a church in Woodville, Ontario, and a woman who, she works with blood in a hospital, got up and showed pictures of what she was seeing under a microscope. And they looked like red pearls and all these different shapes that they were seeing with the blood. And she said, we've never seen this before. She looked like she was older than I was. I'm 50, so I'm saying she's got at least a 30-year career. And she's like, we have never seen anything like this before.
And what did she describe them as?
Basically, like they looked more like a structure, like pearls, like a string of pearls. They looked very mechanical. They didn't look natural. They looked more, man-made type of thing. So I can't really speak to that other than this is what she's presenting and this is what she's saying. And, you see a lot of stuff on social media. Who posted a picture of, Dr. Chris Shoemaker. He lost his license. He's been vaccinated, but he lost his license because he's been pushing back against the CPSO quite hard for the last year and a half. And he showed pictures of blood clots on his social media today. I know Chris. I've met him many times. We've talked about stuff, and these things look like strips of bacon. That my first thought was, why is Chris posting his breakfast? But it was actually blood clots that were pulled out of arteries. It's pretty disgusting stuff. And a lot of the doctors, Ryan Cole, he's a pathologist from the United States, and we saw a presentation of him at least 6 or more months ago. And he was showing a lot of the findings, a lot of the data that he was seeing as a pathologist. And unfortunately, when you're seeing the pathologist, it's kind of too late for you. Mm-hmm. But he was sharing a lot of his data at this presentation we saw in Toronto. I'm not a doctor or a lawyer. My girlfriend is, she went to medical school in Europe. As a dentist, she understands this stuff. So when I have those questions, I go to her and I say, hey, what the hell is this thing about? Then it's like I get the medical answer, and it would be almost like me giving her a software answer, and it doesn't usually work out. So I'm just like, give me the Coles notes. And when I talk about software, I just see the glazing. I'm looking at her right there, and she's smiling. So, yeah.
That's funny.
I get it.
Well, listen, on a lighter note, can we just kind of shift to another subject real quick?
Sure.
Tell me about Tom Marazzo. Where are you from?
Niagara Falls.
You're from Niagara Falls?
Yeah, I was born and raised in between Niagara Falls and St. Catharines. I spent time in both cities growing up.
Okay. Did you ever get down to the falls? Or did you not care?
Or they're just boring?
Funny, I thought like in 1999, August 1st, 1999 was the first time I ever saw the ocean with my own eyes. It's the first time I saw the actual Atlantic Ocean.
Okay.
And I was like, wow, now I get what people experience when they see Niagara Falls. Because to me, it's like,
oh, I see.
It's just it's a big giant ditch with the water going over
it.
Whip-de-doo.
Yeah.
And I
get it
makes
me thirsty.
Yeah, I get it now.
When Rhonda and I travel, people say, oh, I'd love to go to Ontario. We want to go to Niagara Falls. And I say, well, we live an hour from there, and we go to Niagara Falls, and we go to a restaurant and have dinner, but we never look at the water.
I tell people, like, get a postcard of the falls, and that's all you need to know.
Totally.
You're done.
And and you stay dry.
You're dry, yeah. It is. You do get soaked from the mist coming off of there. Yeah. I went to high school in Niagara Falls. Mm-hmm. I went there. I played football and basketball. Let's leave it at that.
Okay.
Then I went to Niagara College, and I did the 3-year technology program in construction engineering technology and architecture. They don't even have the program anymore. They just split it between civil engineering and architectural technology. In high school, I joined the reserve, so I was technically still 16.
Okay.
Because my birthday's in April. So in February, I enrolled in the military.
Actually, that was actually my next question.
Yeah, almost like 34 years ago to the day.
Okay.
Wow.
So I enrolled in the reserves at 16 because I'm in my 17th year, so I could kind of squeak through. So I started basic training when I was about 16. Hated it. I hated it.
What?
I was infantry. I
Yeah,
hated
but
it.
didn't you voluntarily join it?
Yeah, I
as a
did.
kid?
I did. You know why? Because I wanted to be a pilot.
Okay.
And I'm like, okay, there's military here in my hometown.
Yeah.
I'm going to see if I like the lifestyle.
Okay.
Right? If I like that stuff. Top Gun had come out a few years earlier. I wanted to be a pilot. That's all I wanted
We
to
just
do.
talked.
We
about
just
this,
talked
yeah.
about that.
Yeah.
About guys wanting to become pilots because of Top Gun.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, that Iron Eagle, Top Gun, a couple other movies. I'm like, yeah, that's what I want to do. My favorite show as a kid was Airwolf. It was about a
true.
helicopter, right?
Yeah.
So I'm like, that's what I want.
I saw Toy Story and wanted to be a cowboy.
There you go. Not a jetpack guy. Space Ranger. Yeah.
That would have been cool.
Yeah. But when I was in grade 4, the space shuttle flew over top of Niagara Falls on the back of a 747.
Oh,
and
wow.
I remember the hair standing up on my arm going, that is the coolest thing
Whoa.
I've ever seen.
Yeah, that's cool.
So I kind of fell in love with aviation. And so all they had was the infantry, or artillery, but I'm like, nah, I'm not doing that. So I joined the infantry. That unit, the Lincoln and Welland in St. Catharines, had a reconnaissance platoon. So of the 8.5 years I spent in the infantry, 5 of that was in a reconnaissance platoon. So that was like operating in, 3-4 man debts, sneaking and peeking, not really getting into the big infantry fights. You're sneaking and peeking, getting information, reporting back. So I really enjoyed that. And the group of guys I worked with at that time in that platoon were exceptionally good. They had their careers during the day, but on, the training nights and weekends, they were out there. They were pretty hardcore soldiers. And so at the time, you had to kind of keep up that standard. You wanted to make sure that you weren't the weak link in that unit. We were only a platoon of 30 guys.
And how old are these guys?
They're all ages. Like some of them were cops, some of them were all young, I would say, other than the regular force people that were attached to the unit. Like my platoon commander was a regular force infantry captain, ranger qualified in the States. The warrant officer in that platoon, he was a Canadian advanced reconnaissance qualified guy. A lot of experience. Like these guys were doing a lot of reconnaissance in Europe in the Germany days. So in 1997, I graduated from college, but in the year prior, 1996, I did, for 6 weeks, I did my assault pioneer course. So it's the infantry's version of a combat engineer. And on that course, I met this guy named James Topp. So James and I, we hit it off immediately. And, there was 3 of us. There was me, James, and a guy named Jeff. And so I really liked what I was doing. It was the first time I ever used explosives, did mine warfare type of stuff, booby traps, building bridges, building bunkers, doing a lot of really cool engineer stuff, but as an infantry soldier. So I graduated in 97, but in 1998, I got accepted into the combat engineers. But because I was doing it full time, I took my commission and I became an officer. Because I thought, I don't want to be doing this stuff as a non-commissioned member.
Is this still with the reserves?
No. So I joined at 98. I enrolled into the regular force army.
Okay.
As an officer in the engineers. Because I wanted to take what I learned in school, what I did in the infantry, and what I learned as an assault pioneer, and everything else, and put that into my full-time career. It's stuff I wouldn't have gotten if I tried to join the infantry as a full-time guy. And I was looking long-term. It's like, is the infantry really going to be something good on my resume when I want to get out? Like, is there a lot of jobs out there where you
have to carry a rifle?
Yeah, you close with and destroy the enemy at Walmart? No, it's not going to work.
Soon.
Right, soon.
Yeah.
So I thought, go into a role within the military that has some civilian application, because I could then transition to construction engineers, right? I'm always thinking long-term about my resume in case I get injured and I have to leave, or I just decide to hang it up, or I stick it out, I retire, but I still have a few years left to earn income. So that's what I did. I went in as an engineer officer, went to my regiment in Petawawa, did my regimental tour. So anyway, we'll come back to why I mentioned James, because hopefully you guys and the viewers know who James Topp is, because a year and a half ago, James walked all the way across Canada,
Oh, yes.
starting 2 years ago today.
Oh,
where
man.
He walked all the way across Canada, so 4,300 kilometers, 131 days, and arrived in Ottawa. And, just, I knew James. And so when he started marching, I hadn't seen him in years. And I'm looking at him on the video. I'm like, that looks like Jimmy. That looks a lot like Jimmy. But he, he's older. I'm older. He slimmed down a lot. And so I realized it was him because he has a very distinct sound when he speaks. Great sense of humor. One of the funniest guys I've ever met. So I'm like, oh my God, that is him. And just through connections, I end up on the phone with him. I'm like, what are you doing? What's up? And he starts telling me what's going on, what he's doing. By that time, I had been one of the 5 original founding members of Veterans for Freedom. And the 5 of us who started it decided, okay, we're going to support James in his walk across Canada. And so we did. So when he got into Manitoba and then into Ontario, Veterans for Freedom were a big part of that. A lot of our members were there marching with him and helping him throughout the whole entire thing. When he got to Ottawa, the whole thing was all the security, the marshaling of all the people that showed up to Ottawa on that last day, on the 30th of June, to support James. Like, we had, I think, close to 1,000 people that marched with James the last 20 kilometers.
Wow.
Yeah, I remember seeing a lot of this. Yeah.
Yeah. So we, Veterans for Freedom, we all showed up wearing our shirts and we were guiding in. We basically formed the public into a group of a bunch of platoons. And then we had one V for F member, just sort of keeping the pack together, right? And we got into Ottawa, or around the National War Memorial. And then there was at least 2,000 more people standing there waiting for him to arrive. So it was a pretty big event.
Yeah.
So the reason James was walking was?
Mandates.
Copy.
Because, a year ago yesterday was when I announced at the convoy that we were going to peacefully withdraw, and that we were recommending that the truckers do that. But we also said that we can't tell them what to do.
Right.
But we're recommending that they do peacefully withdraw from the city today. The next day, James left British Columbia and started his journey across the country the next day. So he did a promotional video saying he was going to do this, and he was wearing his uniform, which he later got charged and court-martialed for wearing the uniform.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah. He had I think a $4,000 fine. And within hours, we had a fundraiser and we raised enough money to pay off that fine. So, he marched across this country to raise awareness. Because here's the thing, James he did 5 tours. He did 2 combat tours in Afghanistan. He was in the Medak pocket. So 92, 93 in Croatia. And it was the heaviest fighting Canadian soldiers had been involved in since the Korean War. And James was there. So he did a full year in Croatia at that time. So he's got basically, of the 5 tours, 4 of them were combat tours. And he was in Macedonia during 9/11. So he's done 5 tours for this country. He's advanced recce, master sniper, 27 years in the regular force. But he had an opportunity to move to BC, to Chilliwack, and take over, become the range warden for the RCMP. They have a shooting range there. And he's like, I'm going to hang up the uniform, take this job, collect my pension, join the reserves, and parade on, train on weekends. And that's what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. Well, the mandates came out. He was told, you've got to get it if you want to stay in the Army. He said no. RCMP said, if you want to keep your job, you've got to participate in this medical experiment. He said no. So he lost both of his jobs. He was kicked out of the military. So he put his uniform on and did a video. He put his first uniform because he was a member of the PPCLI when he first joined the military. And he put his original uniform on. And then that's what they court-martialed him for, that he was wearing the wrong uniform. And anyway, the whole thing's a joke.
Holy crap. How friggin' petty is that shit?
It is petty. It's petty. But he embarrassed them. He drew attention to their illegal order.
They shouldn't have been embarrassed.
Oh, I know. So, hey, it gets even worse. I mean, I will never wear a poppy again. I will never wear a poppy created by the Legion. And I'll explain that in a minute. But, so he lost both jobs. And the day, 2 years ago today was the last day of the police beating the crap out of all of us. I wasn't beaten, but I mean, I'm speaking on behalf of the Canadians that were protesting and the veterans, because a lot of veterans were beaten on that day by the police right there at the National War Memorial. We had cops beating the crap out of, Afghanistan wounded veterans.
Really?
Oh yeah. It's pretty awful.
I mean, you see a lot lot on social media, a lot of shit goes around, but to know what really went on, my little sister was up there. She went up and frontline signs and shouting and yada yada.
Yeah.
So she saw some of it, but just you don't know what's true, you don't know what's false. This is a crazy. This was just a whole crazy event. Sorry.
Yeah.
Continue.
So anyway, James decided that was enough. So he launched Canada Marches, and he found another guy, Christian George, who was a reservist, who joined him on the entire trip from day one all the way to Ottawa. And this guy was excellent. Like, Christian is really a solid guy helping him. But as he was traveling across Canada, he was meeting a lot of Canadians who would come out to the side of the highway just to support him, give him money, a lot of times give him shelter. But then the legacy media got a hold of the story, and there was counter-protesters, accusations that James was a white supremacist. And that was what the story that the media ran with against James. So James had occasions where they were going to go to the Legion. They set up a contract or he would have an event, a fundraising event to keep walking across Canada at the Legion. Well, the National Command for the Legion shut it down and said, no, we don't want anything to do with that guy. He's a racist. And so they didn't let him go in there. But you can go into any Legion now and ask if you can book a drag queen story hour to show off your sexual perversion in front of toddlers. As long as the parents okay it, right? They think that's great. I'm going to show you a grown man dressed as a woman who's going to twerk or tweak or whatever the hell it is in front of your toddler.
It's almost the same.
Because you want to be, inclusive and somehow teach your children on the morality that they should be following into the future. Sorry, that guy's a pedophile. Okay. And he's up there putting on this sex act in front of children. Like, he's getting some sort of sexual need fulfilled by doing that dance in front of toddlers. Sorry, but that's unacceptable. But the Legion will allow that. They will advertise and support that because they want to be all inclusive and diverse. But a 5-time deployed combat veteran for this country is a racist, and therefore you're not going to help him walk across this country and raise an awareness for bodily autonomy, informed consent, and personal freedom. That's what we've done. So I will not wear a poppy on Remembrance Day. I've made my own, and I wear on my coat that I wear now, it's the Afghanistan Memorial flower. But I'm not going to, because the Legion, the Royal Canadian Legion, owns the rights to the poppy in Canada. So I'm not going to support them. I'm not going to give them money, and I'm not going to give them advertising. I'll make my own poppy, which I did last year, not the Remembrance Day that just passed. The previous year, I made some out of red paper and drew a poppy on it. That's what I'll do, but I'm not giving them my time or money.
Do you find that behind closed doors, people will tell you that they support not necessarily you, but the cause of that, as opposed to them being outside with their friends?
Yeah. I mean, as time has gone on, we've been more open to talking about it. People need a community. When you feel alone in your thoughts, you tend to just stay silent or nod when other people talk.
It's a good question. That has not been my experience, only because people know who I am. They know what I'm about. I am all over social media for different things. And so when people meet me, and my superpower is that I can go anywhere I want anywhere in the world and nobody recognizes me. They'll know the name, but they won't put two and two together unless I'm standing at, beside a truck, or I'm at some event where a whole bunch of people who supported the convoy are. But if I'm at the mall, I've never once had anyone come up to me and say, "Hey, you look familiar. Like, you're that guy." That never, ever happens to me. It happens to Tamara and Chris Barber. Like, they get it everywhere they go. Me, not at all. But Keith Wilson, who is the lawyer that I worked with. So I had Keith Wilson and Eva Chipiuk were both the lawyers that I was in Ottawa with. And the three of us we did everything together. We went to all the meetings together. Like, we did a lot of strategy together. Keith is a lawyer. Eva's a lawyer. They're bound by their licensing, the Law Society of Alberta. And so that's the circles that they operate in, is the legal circles, people that rub elbows with the government, government officials. That's their circles that they're in. Keith has told me that many people in industry contact him behind the scenes and are like, "Thank God you were there." But they can't come out and publicly support Keith. Right. So for me, that doesn't happen, but there are people, let's say in the white collar spheres, that it definitely does happen. They won't come out publicly,
thank God,
and say, this guy is our guy. And I know Keith has paid a price for his participation in the convoy. Same with Eva. They've paid a big price.
So it's just that it's been my experience that for a couple of years, there were so many people against, like they would bend over backwards to get another booster. And make you wear your mask and do all these things. But then when you're standing outside having a cup of coffee outside the studio, just having a chat, they're so against it. It's crazy. Like, I don't understand.
Yeah. I wanted to say this list of the things in the past 4 years that have shown through: wokeism, pandemic, mass migration, medical assisted in dying, unknown causes of death. In some schools and establishments, there's the removal of national anthems. There's a lot about sex and race now. It's been so prevalent, it's fucking insane. Gender ideology. Even in some cases recently, there's been aliens. What the fuck? And all of this has to do with, you think, perhaps maybe depopulation, or are all these things different? It's been a weird 4 years.
Yeah.
But it says to me a lot too about the people and how, the government's hitting everybody.
Yeah.
Why would anyone believe anything anymore when everybody has something to do with with this?
Yeah.
This wokeism and whatever the hell's going on. At some point, it hits them.
Mm-hmm. So I often talk about these three circles. Okay. It's the circle of control, what you directly control. Your circle of influence, what you can directly influence, that your effort can influence that. And then the last one is your circle of concern. Circle of concern, you can't do anything about that. Like, I can't have an impact on aliens. Okay, I can't have an impact on many, many things out there. Caesarian Jewish people, aliens that live in Antarctica, lizard people. I have no control over that. But when we talk about the circle of control and the circle of influence, when it comes to influence, you should be trying to convert influence into what you can control. And that's what you focus on, what you can control and what you can influence. Circle of concern, keep an eye on it. There's other people out there that will spend all of their time and energy in that third circle, and they can't control or influence it, but that's where they put all their energy in. And I always tell people, get out of that circle, focus on the other two. But you got to still kind of monitor it. Even it's so absurd. You've got to monitor it even for entertainment value. Like where are they, what's next? Like, you've got to have an
why did the aliens pick Antarctica? It's
And
so freaking cold.
who? Yeah, fuck yeah.
Cold-blooded. I don't know. I don't know how that works, but there is a deliberate disruption to Western civilization. Okay, do you see, Muslim countries right now, third world Muslim countries having to deal with wokeism, inequality? No, because their lives are not unified. They're not organized. If they were organized, they wouldn't be a third world country. So they're not really part of the equation all that much. It's Western civilization that, in order for this depopulation, it must be destabilized as well. You've probably seen the Yuri Bezmenov video where he's talking. He filmed it in the mid 80s. He was the Russian defector guy, big round glasses, like a sandy brown blonde hair. He was a former KGB guy, and he was on a show and he was explaining how the Russians go and completely subvert an entire country. And the first phase of this, there's 4 phases, but the first phase takes, I think, 20 years to accomplish, and it's the demoralization. And I don't mean demoralized like, oh, how you feel today? I'm a little demoralized. I'm not talking about your personal sadness. I'm saying you are a moral person who needs to have your morals removed. It's demoralization.
Wow.
Right? So this is the first piece. And what do? You attack the values of a society to the point where now you're instilling this woke ideology within your youth. And all of this stuff does happen at the local level because students in public school are a captive audience and they're separated from the parents. You don't see as much attention given to the universities per se. Okay, let me back that up a little bit. You do. The colleges and universities, the post-secondary, it's extremely woke. But it's a different kind of a dynamic there. Because once you're 18, you're an adult. And if you're in post-secondary, your parents aren't part of that equation at all. You can disrupt the minds of them. But what we're seeing is school boards literally encouraging staff to lie, to teach their kids to lie to the parents. Now, who did that? What's the first group of people we saw do that in our history, in our lifetime? The Nazis. The Nazis deliberately wanted to break the bonds between the children and the parents. During the 30s, up until the 30s, when Hitler became the chancellor in 33, what they always did is, kids went to church and on weekends. Okay, they had school on Saturdays and they also had church, which was a lot of Bible study, stuff that's not fun. When the Germans came in, they said, get rid of that crap. The kids are going to have fun. It's mandatory you come to school, but you're doing sports and fun activities all day. And you're going to get a little side taste of indoctrination because they want to break the bonds of the children to the parents. This is why, if you look at the policies, and I already verified this with my son's principal in the Niagara region. I got a draft copy sent of their policies around all this woke ideology crap. And I read in the paragraph where they were talking about not disclosing or encouraging children to not discuss things with the parents. So I got a hold of my son's principal and I said, what is this? Is this true? She goes, well, that's only a draft. I said, I can tell you right now, if you make this into an official policy, me and a lot of people will be showing up on your door. Like this is an abomination. You have no right to do this. And I got to be careful with, the school because I get a lot of support from that school for my son. So you got to be careful on how you choose your words. And I keep it very diplomatic, but I literally looked at the policy and it talked about encouraging lying to parents. And it talked and encouraged staff to not disclose certain information that they know about with their children. I just looked at a policy that came out in the Kingston area. It came from the union and the human rights. There was legislation, and it basically warned teachers in the Kingston area that if you use certain terminology, certain phrases, you do certain things, they view that as a human rights violation, and you will be sanctioned by management, by the board, and it's with support of the union. And this is coming out of the NDP.
Holy fuck.
Yeah. So, the thing is when they're in post-secondary, the parents aren't in Overwatch. But when they're in elementary school, when they're trying to get the ideology into these kids' impressionable minds at a young age, they got to figure out, how do we inject ourselves between the kids and the parents? Like, it's really quite disturbing, the stuff that's going on. And a lot of the teachers don't like it, but they want to keep their jobs.
Right.
Makes sense.
Right?
So where does it come from? It's trickling down from something.
A lot of it, is it SOGI? It's coming out of the United Nations. They've got so it's funny, the UN, there are 6 different sort of areas within the United Nations. And historically, we've always thought about the UN was peacekeeping and military force.
That's my understanding.
Right. But they have a bunch of other, let's say, pillars and how they operate. There's, I think, 6 total. And peacekeeping is only one small thing of what they do. But they have the United Nations Assembly. They have the United Nations Security Council. They have all different things. And economic development is a big part of what the UN does. The UN is also heavily involved in the WHO. And so, these things have all these
Our heroes.
These tentacles, right?
Yeah.
And so when you're looking at what the UN is involved in, and, people think that, the UN, it's a big, giant bureaucratic machine. It can't do anything without its member countries participating in sort of the direction that they want to go. I hear these stories all the time about UN troops. Okay, there's no such thing as UN troops. Like that, UN troops don't exist. The United Nations does not have its own military. It does not have its own police force. What happens is, in the case of, let's say, Cyprus, Canada was in Cyprus for 30 years. Canada is a member of the United Nations, and there's a peacekeeping mission every 6 months, or it used to be. We haven't been there in over a decade. It used to be a 6-month rotation to Cyprus. Okay, what they would do, because they don't have like this big giant base, UN base of their own soldiers. What they do is they say, hey, Canada, can you provide a battalion to go to Cyprus? Hey, America, can you provide a battalion? So it's a task force meant to take all the member countries, contribute soldiers. And then they all just wear a UN beret, but they belong to Canada. And so the same thing happens with policing. You can deploy on a mission overseas with the United Nations as a police officer. They have a group that does that as well. So they don't have this big standing army of their own. They take it from every other country that's a member. And
sneaky.
It is. It's efficient too, in the sense.
Okay.
But we always hear, people get really excited when they see an airplane up in North Bay that has the UN marking on there. It's like, well, planes have to land and refuel. Don't get excited about that. It's only a little tiny plane. It might be transporting police officers. It might be, but you don't know what it's really doing. So don't really, that's in your circle of concern. That's not your circle of control. Okay, so leave it alone. Don't get excited about it. It's a nothing burger. But when you get on social media, people get all excited about and worked up. I don't know how many times. So at the convoy, there was these police in brown outfits, right? And everybody said they were UN police. And I don't know how many times.
I saw this, yes.
I don't know how many times I have to go and say to people, they were not UN police. I physically walked up and I looked at the badge on the guy's arm because I believed that they were Sûreté de Québec. So Quebec and Ontario have provincial police. Sûreté de Québec is provincial police for the province of Quebec. That is the uniform that they wear. I walked up, I saw the badge with the fleur-de-lis on it, and I already knew who they were prior to. And I walked over to Alexa Lavoie from Rebel News because she's from Quebec. And I said, those are Sûreté de Québec, right? She goes, yeah, they are. And they're terrible. I said, yeah, I know. And then they shot her in the leg with a projectile.
Wow.
So people got all spooled up and excited. Oh, the UN had police there unmarked. It's like, no, those are Canadian cops in Canadian uniforms in Ottawa. because when they declared the Emergencies Act, they took police from all different jurisdictions as far away as BC and Newfoundland to come to Ottawa and help out the cops that were in there making the mass arrests, because there wasn't enough cops to go around. So the UN, you know, they have so many tentacles into so many different organizations, and they're active in so many different things, especially the WHO. Okay, and that's under the UN. The World Health Assembly is another part of the UN. These are the ones that are trying to take control of pandemic responses. So to tell you that if Canada agrees to this pandemic treaty, it basically means, Canada, you're no longer in charge of your own pandemic response. The WHO will be under the WHA, the World Health Assembly. So it's hard to say who's driving this whole thing. But on the surface, like you said earlier, they're hiding in plain sight under these official organizations that are really household names for people. They understand that. They just don't know who the guy is standing behind the curtain. They all just look at the Wizard of Oz.
It's fascinating.
Yeah.
And then, you know, this goes on through different, you know, it happens in all Western civilization. If you look at all of the countries in the world, I think, that are without central banks, or let's say part of the IMF, International Monetary Fund. If you look at all the countries that belong to them, there's 3 that don't. Russia, Iran, and for a time, Venezuela. Okay. Remember the old axis of evil from 9/11?
Yeah.
The 3 countries that made up the axis of evil were not part of the IMF. Well, how did they get their name on that list? Well, because they don't want to hand over their money or their sovereignty. They're, you know, nationalists. They're not globalists. And they're protecting their people and their people's interests. So let's target the people that are not in the club with us and make them the bad guy, make them the villain. That's how it's all done, right? And I hate to say it, but people have pretty soft heads.
100%.
Yeah.
Speaking of soft heads, a lot of cops were up in that
Freedom
convoy. Now, did you ever see a cop like lay down his gun, you know, so to speak?
I had heard stories from people that were at the front line. Like, I was there when the 2 people got run over by the horse. Like, I was standing right there. Like,
it was an older lady.
Yeah, Candace. Her last name starts with an S. And the other guy just came forward. He's actually part of the lawsuit with the other legal team. There was a lot of rumors that he was killed that day by the horse, and that, you know, but and everyone's been looking for him. I don't even know his name. I just know that he came forward. He's part of the other team's lawsuit against the government. But I had heard rumors that there was, I never heard a story of a cop saying, you know, I'm not doing this, and turn around left. I did hear 2 things though. A lot of Ottawa police said, I am not going downtown. And if you try to send me downtown, I'm taking a sick day, or I'm going on vacation until this shit's over. I'm not doing that to these people. So that was one story I heard a couple of times. Another story I heard, that when the public was right there appealing to, you know, the police that were on that line, if that cop spoke back to the protesters, the sergeant would come over and pull them off the line and put someone in that gap.
Spoke back in what regard?
Like, engaged in dialogue with the protesters.
Regardless of what the conversation was.
Yeah. Any discussion.
Okay.
It was like, no, you keep a straight face. You don't talk to these people. And if you do, you're getting pulled off the line. So, because people were there, like, there's a video I saw of a woman trying to hand the cops a flower, and the guy whacked it right out of her arm, right across the forearm with a big stick. You know, so you had some of them were willing and ready and able to start busting skulls. And some of them I know didn't want to.
Some of them, I bet, were pretty excited about it, to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely they were.
You know, I know guys that just kind of like that.
Yeah.
Just in general.
I talked to a lot of retired police. The first group that I belonged to, organized group, was a group called Police on Guard. So you remember when in Calgary, the 2 female officers tried to arrest that guy for playing hockey? It was in December, right after the convoy started. The lockdowns were there. It's a group of guys out on a pond.
Playing street hockey.
There was a few of those stories throughout.
Yeah.
They're out on the ice, out in a public park, playing hockey on skates, and there was too many players on the ice. So
Of course.
the cops got called. 2 female officers tried to arrest this 20-year-old guy, and he was like, "What the hell are you touching me for? Like, why are you doing that?" And they're pulled out the taser, tried to take him down. He resisted. They finally got him though, and the next day, one of the founding members of an organization called Police on Guard, who was he lives in Goderich area, Chris Vanden Boss, he went public with Police on Guard, and it was all police that were disgusted by the behavior of police in Canada, and they came together. You know, there were RCMP, OPP, city cops, everything. This large group of police, and then the other one was a Toronto cop, Matt Blacklaws, who they came together and started Police on Guard for thee. And they started pushing back. They filed lawsuits against police departments and everything. These are the cops that we want, right? These are the ones that, and they were in they were in this from day one. And I was actually at the convoy with a bunch of their leadership. It's the first time I ever actually met Chris Vanden Boss in person. And I was like, this guy's huge. Like he's got to be in the 280, solid, big, giant cop. But he believes in his community. He believes in policing by consent. You know, he derives his authority by the public that he's trying to help. So when he's seen these 2 idiot police officers trying to arrest a Canadian for playing hockey outside, that was just a bridge too far for him. So he's like, no, I can't do this. And the next day they launched their on Facebook. They went public on Facebook with Police on Guard, and then a bunch of people joined in. Wow. 3 months later, they allowed emergency response people, medic, fire, whatever, and military to join. So that's when I joined. I had heard about them, but I wasn't a police officer, so I couldn't join at the time. And I sent it to a friend who was a cop. He joined. And then he told me 3 months later that they're opening up to non-police. And like Chris did a video, it is a pretty big viral video of Chris when he was in his car with his family, driving in his minivan, driving to Ottawa in the convoy. He was very emotional, was crying, talking about, you know, showing video of all the people lining the overpass and all the support that he was getting. So I talked to Chris the morning I got the call to go to the convoy. And I said, yeah, him and I spoke. And then I got the call to go to the convoy, and then I was on the way and Chris called me. And so, you know, there was a lot of police that were there that were on our side from day one. But I've been told by a lot of police that the people getting hired now into policing, they're all compliant people. They're not people that are going to push back against authority. That's a major thing, a major attribute that these people have, is that they're very obedient to authority. And that's actually it's actually dangerous for police officers to be obedient to authority, because every time a police officer responds to a call, they have complete autonomy and authority over that situation. So if you're a new police officer, brand new out of OPC in Elmer, you see a car accident on the side of the road, you're the first responder. That's your scene. You know, your sergeant shows up, he doesn't take over. That's yours. He tells you, you deal with it. It's yours. That's not like the military where, you know, the private sees it, the corporal shows up, corporal takes over, then the sergeant takes over, then the officer takes over. It's not like that. You're the on-scene commander, you own this situation. So police have an enormous amount of autonomy. But what they're doing is they're hiring people that don't care much about autonomy. They care more about, you know, being obedient to authority. And that's why you're seeing all these cops, the young ones, ready to get in there and bust some skulls, right? It's not a good state for our policing.
Oh, my God.
I'm speechless. It's disgusting.
Yeah. What was the call to the convoy that you just mentioned?
So the convoy got there 2 days before I got that call. And a friend of mine who knew I was retired military thought, you know, they're having struggles, like trying to get a little bit organized there. Like, they were great getting to the convoy, but
You have to forgive my dog.
Oh, that's okay. They were awesome getting to Ottawa. And then they got there and they were like, okay, this is getting bigger than we thought. We're getting a lot of support. We got to get a little more better organized. And they were, for the most part. I think they did a great job of that. But one of the original organizers, he called me, he says, look, we're kind of struggling here. And we understand that, for you, an Army guy, this would be something that you could come here and organize a little bit better. So I said, okay, you could probably go there and I could go there and do a sustainment plan. So I'm telling him what to do, but he's like, can you just drive here? Because I was only 2 hours away. I was living in Kingston at the time. I'm like, all right, fine. I'll just go there. And I packed a bag for 5 days.
Wow.
Expecting that I would just go there, build the sustainment plan, and then go home. Just hand it off to somebody else. But as I got there, the original things that I thought that I would be dealing with started to resolve themselves. But I thought, we really need to start pushing the ball down the field. We can't just sit here on the 10-yard line the whole time. So we're going to have to make some changes and figure out a strategy. So I started to get involved in that. And then the lawyer showed up. So where I expected that I was going to be there for no more than 5 days, I ended up staying for 22. I never had any intention of doing any public statements, spokesperson stuff, media, nothing. That was not my interest or my intention. But the situation evolved to the point where I kind of had to. And a lot of people responded to my involvement as opposed to the things that they had seen. Guys like Pat King. Pat King's a very controversial guy.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of like the convoy was viewed through a certain lens because of the way the mainstream media was lying about them. And then you had spokespeople like Pat King and other people that kind of turned the public off. And then when I did the public statements, that just brought a different dynamic altogether. And the reason I spoke publicly was because I wanted to communicate certain messaging to the City of Ottawa political apparatus, and especially to the Chief of Police for Ottawa. So I wrote all my statements. That was, all mine. And, I had discussions with the lawyers about why I was doing this, and they were in agreement. But, when I did my master's degree in business, I focused on negotiations. And so I understand that language very well. And even though it seems like I'm making a public statement, what I'm actually doing is communicating a certain amount of intention to a specific audience, which was the Chief of Police, the council, and then any other government official who's watching this. But from, the public's perception, they're looking at it and going, okay, that's a morale boost thing. But it's not. You're trying to communicate your intent. And you see this when unions get involved in a big, long strike or negotiation with the government. Both sides will do it. You'll see them have a big negotiation session, and then they'll go out and talk to the media. They're not informing the public or informing members. What they're doing is they're using media as a tactic against their opponent. And they're communicating certain things and putting pressure on their opponent through the media. And I was doing the exact same thing. So, because they wouldn't talk to us. The government refused to talk to us. And I couldn't get a meeting with the Chief of Police or the mayor. We all tried. But the highest ranking person I spoke to the whole time was a sergeant. And he was terrible at it. The guy was terrible. And I couldn't get through any higher ranking people to have a serious conversation with them about what was going on. So I had to take the media approach, and that's what I did. So, it did eventually get me a meeting with the city manager, who is the highest ranking non-elected official in the city of Ottawa. So I had my first meeting with him. By the way, all this stuff, it's in the book.
Mm-hmm. We're going to get to the book.
Yeah, it's all in the book, and I talk about that kind of in detail. But, it was just, I never had any intention of being one of the faces of the convoy. That was not my intention when I got there. But there was a little bit of a vacuum for, something that I was uniquely equipped to fill. And that's why I did some. In truth, I think I only did 5 public statements the whole time I was there for the 22 days. I was only like 5 videos I was involved in. That's it. Not
Man,
very
you
many.
made an effect.
Yeah, you really did.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Was it?
Now-
You go ahead.
No, I was just, is there any looking back now? Like, I mean, you're now you're here. You're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, this is you.
Yeah, that's the big difference between 2019 and 2020.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was the thing. Like when this thing first did it, I was the gray man. I wasn't trying to draw any attention to myself because, again, I didn't know who my adversary was. I didn't know where the threats were coming from. I just knew they were out there. So I wasn't going to be easy pickings as a lone wolf who has no support. So I was, gray man. After a couple of months, I was like, I'm not wearing that mask anymore. That's stupid. Like it says on the box, not to be used to stop viral transmission. It says it on the box. So I'm not doing that anymore. So, at the end of the day, yeah, I wanted to be the gray man because I didn't know who the threat was. But then through a series of circumstances, I ended up going to Ottawa. Now, even when I went to Ottawa, I wasn't fully sure who the threat was. But the moment that the convoy started to head towards Ottawa, I was like, I'm keeping an eye on that thing. That is probably the biggest act of civil disobedience that we're likely to see, and it's going to be the most effective. So when I got the call, again, I didn't think I was going to even be invited. But the moment he made that ask, there was no way I was going to refuse. And I wasn't going to offer it too, because I didn't want to be invited somewhere that you want to ask me, I'll go, but I'm not going to inject myself into your thing. You've
Sure.
done this, you take credit, that's yours, you own it. But he asked me to go, and I thought there's nowhere else that I could possibly be. This is how I protect my family. This is how I protect, my community. And I push back against this government. And that was the best choice that I could have made at the time. Did it have a big cost? In a lot of aspects, it cost me everything, but I also gained everything. She's sitting there. I know you can't see her on the camera, but she's sitting there. And that's probably the biggest benefit that I've ever had of my involvement in any of the COVID experience.
That's
is that
beautiful.
I get to be with her.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
But I also, I've had other family implications towards me that are more difficult. But over time, I'm going to get that back.
Yeah, we all have.
Yeah.
I have people in my family
Yeah.
right now that don't speak to me.
Oh, during the convoy, like when the I went public at the convoy and the bank accounts got frozen, my uncle and my grandfather were furious, and they were sending text messages to my cousin. They didn't have very nice things to say about me because they were afraid they were going to get their bank accounts frozen. So as
Just
a
by
joke,
association.
yeah, because of the same last name. And as a joke, I said to a friend of mine, next live stream, I need to get the addresses of my uncle and my grandfather so I can thank them for all their support during, this difficult time at the convoy, and give their addresses. But, it's a joke. I wouldn't have done that to them.
Right.
I mean, it would have been funny.
No. I dig the humor. Get it. I get it.
So you go ahead.
No, you go ahead, because I was going to just ask Tom to show the book. Let's talk about this book for a second.
Okay, well, let's do that.
All right.
That's fine.
Yeah. So this is the book.
Take your fingers off the title, sir.
Sorry.
Yeah, there you go. The People's Emergency Act.
Yeah. So a friend of mine, one of the other founding members of Veterans for Freedom, I ran in the Ontario election last year, lost. But I announced that I was running at in Toronto at the where's the ice rink? The outdoor ice rink downtown.
Like at the city hall there?
City Hall, yeah. Is it Nathan
some
Phillips
square.
Nathan-
Yeah, that's right.
So I announced there was about a crowd of about 1,000. It was at Worldwide Rally 7. And
It's like Niagara Falls. Meh.
yeah.
Who cares?
Who cares?
Just look for something with water. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry.
So I before I I gave my speech announcing that I was going to run, a friend of mine, Sammy, he said to me, because he was at the Windsor Bridge and he got arrested, charged, the whole bit. And he said, like the convoy itself and Coots and all of these protests that popped up all across the country, Justin Trudeau invoked the Emergencies Act, but the convoy and everything else was the People's Emergency Act that they declared against the government. And I'm like, that's my book.
Fucking A, man.
That's my book title.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So it's because of Sammy that he came up with the name of the book. I was actually going to call it Wellington, Media, and Morale, because Wellington is the street in front of the Parliament, and that's the street that we were mostly concentrated on. And Wellington was my number one priority for where I wanted all the trucks. Media was another big part of the strategy that we were working, and then morale was a big part of the strategy that we were trying to build. So that's why, and a lot of people looked at it and said that title just sucks. I'm like, all right, fine.
It's funny.
Yeah. So, but I think I'm really happy with the title of this book.
I bought the audio version.
It's great.
You did, eh?
I did, yeah.
Okay.
I'm about probably close to halfway through.
Yeah, so Mark Novak actually narrated that. He did an amazing job. He's a musician. The music in between chapters is original to
Yeah, that's interesting that he does that.
Yeah, because he knew I was a U2 fan, and so he was like doing some riffs that sounded like the band U2, and he did a great job. It took him 3 months to do that audiobook. I was very happy with the result of that. He's an entertainer. And he knew how to really bring it to life. And Asha and I, we would sit there and listen to each chapter, and we'd have different opinions on what we heard, but we'd listen again and like, okay, no, it's good. So I'm very happy with what Mark did on that.
And where can people get it?
So this is on Amazon, so you can get hardcover is on Amazon, paperback, the audiobook, and Kindle. And then veteransforfreedom.ca also sells the paperback.
Okay.
They sell other merchandise and stuff like that on the website. So, and it's all the same. Like you'll get them whenever. It'll be a little sooner probably with Amazon, depending. But if you're going to try to buy the paper or the hardcover, it takes a while.
Takes a bit. Yeah.
They're printed in the United States, and the paperback are printed here in Canada.
Right.
We just ordered a batch of 250 paperback, and we sent them to Saskatchewan, because next month we'll be at a big fundraiser for Chris Barber and Tamara Leach and everyone else.
Yeah.
March 9th.
March 9th.
March 9th we'll be in Swift Current, Saskatchewan, for the big fundraiser there. On the poster is Eva Chipiuk, who is our lawyer. She's our lawyer, right? Because Tamara, she got the George Jonas Freedom Award handed out by the JCCF, Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms.
Wow.
And
cool.
Because I was there, so she has bail conditions. She cannot have contact with me unless in the presence of her lawyer. So we go to the big fundraising Freedom Award dinner. She's the recipient. She gives a speech. She steps off the stage, walks past me. I just say, hey, great speech. Really well done. She sits down at the table. I'm hardly even talking to her. But the head of the JCCF, the head lawyer, is at our table. Behind her is her criminal lawyer. We got lawyers all over the room. And I hardly talked to her because she was, the fan favorite there, and everybody wanted a photo with her and talk to her. People submitted the video of her stepping off the stage and talking to me for 3.5 seconds. And then there was a photo that we were in, and there was no lawyer in the photo. So people submitted that evidence to the Crown Attorney in Ottawa. And so she got arrested and put in remand for 24 nights, 25 days. They said it was a breach of her bail conditions. So she went back into remand.
Oh my God.
They actually flew to her home in Alberta, arrested her. 2 Ottawa police escorted her back to Ottawa, and she was incarcerated for 25 days.
Welcome to Canada to the free.
Yeah. And it wasn't a bail breach. The Justice of the Peace did not let her out, kept her, and then they finally got a judge, and he ordered her immediate release. They had her shackled. Okay. You got to remember, Tamara and Chris are only charged with mischief. Mischief is a like, I don't have enough things to charge you with, so I'm going to tack on mischief too. It's a throwaway. It's your gimme, it's like a teacher giving a point to you because you wrote the right date and your name on your test paper. It's a throwaway. And so that's what they're being charged with. And then she got 25 days in jail for the first time she was charged with mischief at the convoy. And then they said she breached her bail conditions, and they put her back in jail for 25 more days for breach of bail for mischief. Okay, so this is Trudeau's Canada. So anyway, the deal is she can't have contact with me unless in the presence of a lawyer. But the thing is, we're both being sued for $400 million. So we do have to have meetings involving the lawyer. So I have to have communication with her because the lawyers need to speak to us about our lawsuits. So anyway, Eva is going to be at this fundraiser. So will James Mason, who's a Toronto lawyer. He's going to be at the fundraiser as well. And they've notified the Crown Attorney in Ottawa that, look, we're doing this fundraiser. They're not going to talk. There's no condition that says you got to be X number of feet away from each other. The deal is we don't communicate unless in the presence of our lawyer. So as long as I go to this thing, I don't have to even talk to her. I can't appear on stage with her, nothing like that. But anyway, it's a book signing tour or a book signing event for me to raise money to help them with their legal fees. So
Jesus.
Well, I hope everybody that hears this buys your book.
Well, the venue, I've been told it's sold out. They expect about 450 people. Chris Barber is hosting it. And it's to help raise money for Chris Barber's legal defenses. And then if there's more, they give it to other people in this country that have been charged, so.
How do you see this all turning out? Do you that's the circle of concern.
Yeah. So, I talk to Chris regularly. I talk to their lawyers regularly, obviously. I keep a very close eye. Ash and I twice have gone to Ottawa to sit in the courtroom to see how things are going. And my read on it is that they are going to be vindicated. They're not going to be charged, but they are facing 10 years in jail for mischief. Not terrorism.
How do they justify any of that?
That's a great question. How do you justify this? This is the longest running trial in Canadian history for the charge of mischief and counseling mischief. So
yeah,
Harold Jonker, who lives in the Niagara region, last April, he was charged with the same charges as Tamara. Last April. So 15 months after the convoy, they finally got around to charging Harold for the same thing that they're charging Tamara. So Chris Barber has one additional charge that Tamara doesn't have, but the charges for Tamara are the same as the ones for Harold. I testified a couple weeks ago for a guy named Jay Vanderweer. He's in trial right now for his participation in the convoy. And, I was the first. It was a weird trial because the lawyer contacted me. He said, I need you to be a witness at Jay's trial. And I said, well, I can't come to Ottawa. He says, we'll do it in Zoom. So I could do it in Zoom. And he says, the trial starts Monday morning. I'll get to you by Wednesday because it'll probably be 2.5 days for the Crown to make their case. And then, you'll be my first witness up. So I talked to him on the Sunday. The next day the trial starts. Noon, he texts me and goes, you're on at 3 today. So they went through this whole exercise and the Crown tried to make their case by noon, 3 hours. The judge isn't going to make a decision until the middle of March. So this guy's sitting there not knowing what he's going to do. The one question that they asked me was, did you see any acts of violence yourself at the convoy? I said, yes, I did. By the police.
Right.
When they showed up and started beating civilians, I said I was right there when the horse ran over those two people. So the only act of violence that I saw personally was from the police against unarmed citizens who Judge McLean ruled had a right to be there. That's what I saw. So I don't know how they're going to convict anybody, honestly. I don't know how. So I think that they're going to be exonerated. And then I think every other case is likely, I'm hoping, to get dropped. Right. And if they don't drop it, it's not in the best interest of the public. It is a complete waste of resources from the government, and they're doing it to be just vindictive.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
That's all.
They don't care about the resources.
No.
They just want to disrupt your life.
Mm-hmm. And we walked in, and somebody said to us, to Chris and Tamara's trial, they said, the process is the punishment. Because, Chris Barber is looking at a few $100,000 to defend himself on top of the fundraising. So JCCF isn't covering 100% of his trial because they can't. They have other people to support. Democracy Fund, Rebel News, they created the Democracy Fund. They are paying for Tamara. But Tamara goes out and she fundraises to help other people's causes as well. Veterans for Freedom just started something called the Accountability Project, so TAP, to raise money to help people with their legal defenses. Shaba Vizi, he's Eastern European, came to Canada. He was badly beaten and hospitalized by the police, but they're still charging him. And he's now on his third lawyer because he was getting screwed around by his other lawyers. But he needs money. He's got to raise money all the time. So everybody in Canada that has been charged with a criminal offense related to the convoy still has to defend themselves. Now, what we saw 3 weeks ago, I think today, Justice Mosley ruled that the Emergencies Act was illegal, that they operated outside of the law, and what they did was wrong, and they violated people's Section 8 Charter rights. But you don't see any of these Crown prosecutors dropping the charges now, do you? You don't.
You would think that would have to be automatic.
Yeah, you would think.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that, the unconstitutional thing. Has it taken effect? Is it going to? Is it going to work? Is it doing anything?
Yeah, because as a result of it, myself and several other people have all filed lawsuits against the federal government now.
With like a bridge that says you're more than welcome to be doing this. It's not. There's nobody else that can make an excuse to tell you you're wrong now.
Yeah,
this is like your.
Yes,
but that's from this side.
Yeah,
nothing's happening from their side.
Not yet. We've filed individual lawsuits, so I'm not in a class action lawsuit. I'm in an individual lawsuit. I'm suing the Attorney General of Canada and the King of England, right? Which are just representatives of the federal government.
Some Judge Judy shit right there. That's
pretty much.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I, myself as an individual, I am suing the government because there's been a ruling in a court that says, yes, you in fact did violate people's charter rights, and you did not have the legal authority to do what you did. And so the government, on that Justice Mosley's ruling, they've announced they're going to appeal it.
Right.
Okay. But a lot of lawyers have looked at the ruling. It's a 190-page ruling, and they've gone through it, and they said it's pretty airtight.
Is that public?
It is public.
Where can somebody see that?
That's a great question. I think Andrew Lawton sent it to me. It's funny because I was laying in bed one day. I wasn't feeling very good, headache, whatever, at noon. I'm half asleep on the couch, messy hair. I just happened to check my phone. Everybody was all excited, and I got an email from Andrew Lawton, his show, and he's like, "Can you come on and talk about this thing?" And I'm like, I don't even know what anyone's talking about, but sure, I'll do it, So I hop in the shower, shave, try to get in front of a camera, but I had 20 minutes to figure out what the hell was going on, and luckily I did. But it's on there. It's a 190-page decision, and it was filed. So what happened was Eddie Cornell is also one of the 5 founding members of Veterans for Freedom. Right after the convoy, they had 30 days because of the legislation in the Emergencies Act itself. Section 62 outlines something called a judicial review. So with a judicial review, it's like you saying, I'm suing the government, but it's a strangely different mechanism. But it's right there in the Emergency Act legislation under Section 62 that defines how a judicial review will take place. If the government invokes the Emergency Act, the citizens have a right to examine the actions of the government. So that's what Eddie did. He took advantage with lawyers and he filed a judicial review against the federal government, which was his right to do so, in the legislation of the Emergency Act itself. Section 63 is, last year we had the Public Order Emergency Commission, where we had Justice Rouleau for 7 weeks. It was a big commission. Everybody was in Ottawa for 7 weeks examining the actions of the government. So Justice Rouleau ruled in favor of the government, but it's a commission. It's not a court of law. It wasn't legally binding. It had no teeth. It was reported yesterday that the government is late on responding to his recommendations, but there's no teeth. There's no fine. There's no power of Rouleau to do anything now. It's dead. But the judicial review is something different. This is what Eddie Cornell and Vince Gerses, who's retired OPP, what they filed within 30 days of the end of the convoy. That ruling was Mosley. That just came out 3 weeks ago today.
Right.
And that's the one that was by a judge in a courtroom and is legally binding. It sets a precedent and it's got teeth. When that ruling came out, all the lawyers in Canada went, lawsuit, because of that.
No doubt.
Without a doubt.
Yeah. And what I've been told by some pretty experienced lawyers is it's really well written. They're going to appeal Mosley's decision. But the thing is with this appeal, it's not like you can introduce new evidence. It's like in an appeal, you're looking at the judge to see if the judge made an error in law. And everyone is saying, no, he was pretty airtight in that decision. I mean, it took him almost 2 years to come to the decision. Mm-hmm. So he was pretty thorough in his ruling, and it's going to be a very difficult thing to appeal. Now, if it gets appealed and the government wins the appeal, the next step is it'll go to the Supreme Court of Canada. But now the government's got a new problem because the Chief Justice, the head of the Supreme Court of Canada, biased himself during the convoy because he spoke to the media and said a lot of disparaging remarks about the convoy. So now will have to recuse himself from any case that makes its way to the Supreme Court as long as he's the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. He's going, like every lawyer is going to fight that and say, you need to step down from this case. You cannot hear this case because you've already shown your bias towards the convoy. So you can't hear this particular case. So that's going to be a federal government problem if it makes it all the way to the Supreme Court. So I think Mosley's decision is going to be incredibly difficult for anybody to try to overturn that.
Well, I would like to read
So.
it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I just sit here thinking, well, how did our government not get to him? Like why him? Why was he? I don't know. It seems like, wow, okay, thank you.
Yeah. Well, even Mosley in his decision, he said, 2 years ago, I would have been quick to also use the Emergencies Act. But now that I've actually had more time to look at the actual evidence, he's concluding that no, they were wrong. They acted outside of their authority, outside of the law. And so they were wrong. They violated people's charter rights under Section 8, which is illegal search and seizure. So really his decision was based around the bank accounts. So when they froze all our bank accounts, he said that's so far outside of the scope of what you should be doing or what you had the authority to do. You violated people's charter rights now. So Section 24(1) of the charter details what a citizen is permitted to do in a democratic, civilized society. Your charter right was violated under one of these different sections. You go to Section 24(1), and it outlines what your responsibility as a citizen is to legally, civilly take your government to court and hold them accountable for the breach of your charter right. So that's what I'm doing. I'm actually using the mechanism within the charter itself to hold the government accountable for breaching my charter rights by seizing my bank accounts. So this is how we're going to do this in a civilized society. We hope.
What's the time frame?
Don't know. They had a 2-year, statute of limitations So when Mosley's decision came out, all the lawyers in Canada that wanted a piece of this, they acted really quickly. I picked my lawyers that I was standing side by side with, shoulder to shoulder at the convoy, which is Keith Wilson, Eva Chipiuk. And then a year after, at the Public Order Emergency Commission, we had a lawyer, Brendan Miller, who was representing the convoy. So the three of them have come together. We've brought the old band back together from the commission, and now they're, the legal team that I'm using to sue the federal government.
So the judge's ruling was he came within the 2-year.
Yeah.
But not by much.
Not by much. So the good thing is, they had about a 3-week window of opportunity there, maybe 2.5 weeks actually.
But had he taken any longer,
then what we could have done is rolled the dice and say, let's take them to court. Let's sue them anyway. Right.
wow.
Because so it was a bit of a gamble. When this thing came, it pushed everybody really hard to start thinking about if they wanted to sue or not. And I chose to sue.
That moment must have been seriously sweet for you.
Yeah, actually, it really was. It really was.
What was that like? What was the moment like?
Well, like I said, I was feeling like 10 pounds of shit in a 5-pound bag that day. And I was on the couch and I'm, huddled up to Asha, and I'm just not feeling it. And then all of a sudden, my phone blows up. I'm looking at it and I'm starting to see what just happened. And I was pretty excited.
Because that was a good day for a lot of people.
It was.
It was a good day for me.
Yeah.
I literally danced to the coffee shop that day.
Yeah. Whatever I was feeling in the morning kind of went away. Within, 20 minutes of that, it's a really good thing. I mean, it's vindication, right? To not just what happened at the convoy, but almost a vindication for the last 4 years that your government has been doing a lot of horrendous stuff that your ancestors would never even have dreamt was possible for the government of the day to do. And so for everything that the government did over the last 4 years, it was almost like that vindication came down to that one decision. And so now with that, not only are we vindicated for what we did at the convoy, but now we actually get to take further steps to keep applying the pressure and hopefully put a nail in the coffin of the Liberal Party of Canada as being the ruling government. That would be nice. We were hoping that the Conservative Party would take this and say, well, add it to the basket of scandals. You've got Arrive Can, Aga Khan, We Charity. I'm even forgetting. I did a whole video on it. It was my number one video on my YouTube channel was the scandals of Trudeau. But since I did that video, I think we've added 3 more scandals to it. Bev Oda, who was a Conservative MP, bought a $16 glass of orange juice and it cost her seat. A Conservative under Harper. You got Justin Trudeau, who's lining up bodies literally. And he's still there. He's the political equivalent to a cockroach in an atomic bomb. And yet he's still in power because Jagmeet Singh doesn't want to let his sugar daddy go. That's where we're at. But
I'm speechless.
Yeah, the public is going to make this guy pay.
You think so?
Yeah, we're not going to dip into his bank account. We're not going to. I mean, he's got so much protection because everything he did in his capacity as an elected official. So are we going to dig into his own personal bank account? No. But are the people going to finally put an end to his government? Yes. And I think the Conservatives should look at the Liberals as a warning. I think that if the public perceives that the Conservative Party, when they form the next government in this country, if they conduct themselves as the Liberals have, I think the public is going to just say, that's enough. We've had enough of this shit. And there'll be a lot of talk about either breaking up the country or just disbanding the federal government altogether. Because if you think about it, what can a federal government do? When they boil it down to the lowest common denominators, there's only 3 things that the federal government can do. They pass laws, they form a budget, and they declare war on a foreign country. Provincial governments don't declare war. They don't have the authority. They don't have a military. They just pass budgets, pass laws. and everything else is just a pain in the ass. So what's the point of having a federal government anymore? I don't see the
I agree.
Truthfully, I think they're a waste of oxygen, a waste of salary. 338 people making 200 grand a year. You know what? I recently,
And that's what we know.
so I left the military medically. I had a parachute accident a couple weeks before 9/11.
Oh my God.
And you know, I had it was a few months before 9/11. That injury, you know, I dislocated an ankle, tore the labrum in my hip. I had to get surgery on my hip. So I left the military eventually medically. I had surgery in 2014 on my hip. And, you know, I have lots of back problems, lots of hip pain, chronic pain, everything. Recently, and I did get an award. I got compensation, financial compensation. But as time went on, you know, it's starting to get difficult. You know, I pulled my back sitting down a few months ago, and for a month was in agony, just sitting down. So, you know, if your injuries are not getting better, or, you know, they're progressively getting worse, you apply through additional pain and suffering. I just got an award for $67.77 for my additional pain and suffering.
Well, good for you.
Right. Now, to be fair too, I did get the original payout.
Yeah. But that's ridiculous.
It is ridiculous, but you know, I got the original payout. And what did I do? I bought RSPs, right? Bought RSPs. So last year, because I haven't been able to find a job in my field that lets me sit at a desk because I can't stand for very long. 2 years ago, I had to cash one of my RSPs because I got fired from my teaching job, and I didn't know how I was going to make my bills for the year. So I cashed one of my RSPs from the money I got from my injury. I blew through that, but it made my exposure on my income tax look ridiculously high. So now I had back taxes. So the tax season that passed last year, I had an RSP. I had to cash the RSP so that I could pay the taxes from the year before. It wasn't enough. I still owe more taxes. But now, because I cashed an RSP last year, it looks like I made a whole bunch of money this year. So now I'm going to get hit with taxes for paying off my taxes. Like, this is the structure that we have. And then when I'm, you know, their CRA was coming after me like crazy. And I said, well, tell you what, why don't you tell your boss who screwed up my life, ask him where I'm supposed to get blood from a stone. Because I don't have the money to pay for it. I got fired from my job because of your policies and your government. I don't know where I'm going to get the money to pay you back the taxes. But I'm certainly not crazy about giving you all my tax money back so you can send it over to Ukraine. You know, like, there's real problems in this country, and yet you want me to pay all of my money that I have to back taxes so you can go and give some other foreign country who was a former enemy of ours during the Cold War all of our money. Like, that's what you want me to do. And I said, by the way, it's kind of hard to give you guys money back when you're freezing our bank accounts, you know, and stopping us from making a living in this country. I felt bad for the CRA lady, but she caught me at a particularly grumpy moment.
You know what? Don't go working at the CRA.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I think.
Yeah. I didn't tell you to work there, but you know, I know I'm going to probably get hit on more income taxes, just because I cashed the RSP last year, and they probably won't hold back enough. But I applied for additional pain and suffering. There's like 3 or 4 different pots of money. And so I did get a nice little chunk back, a little more per month than I was expecting, which was good. It's really helpful. I mean, I'm not going to lie. But I applied for the actual real significant additional pain and suffering, and I was expecting that I would get some kind of compensation. And
Now, is that through the military?
Veterans Affairs.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And then when it came back, it said, yeah, you're getting $67.77. I thought, how did you calculate that? How did you determine that my injury was worth $67.77? Like, where did the 77 cents come from? Like, did you have to do calculus? Like, what did you do to determine that number? I mean, I'll take the money.
Yeah.
I'll take the money, obviously.
Because you could have lunch.
Well, yeah, we got a membership at a vineyard in Niagara on the Lake. It's like, okay, that's wine money for the month.
Okay.
You know, I mean, it's a discount. It's on sale. You got to take it, right? But it's even the lawsuit for me. I mean, I had some real difficulty. Ash and I, we spent a lot of time and with Keith talking about the fact that you're going to sue the government, but the taxpayers are the ones that are going to have to pay the bill. It's not coming out of Justin Trudeau's bank account.
Right.
But part of Section 21, one of the important facets of that piece of the charter says that your action is to lead to a deterrent, to create a deterrent for your government to ever do this to the public again. And so that's the kind of piece that I'm holding on to, is that not only is it fair and just that you take this step towards the government, but it must be a deterrent in some way for your government ever to do that again. Mm-hmm. But the way I can rationalize it the best is I'm just taking Liberal voters' tax dollars. I'm not taking the rest of yours. And so that's where I'm going to take the money. But great. At the end of the day, this has never been done before. Nobody's ever sued under the Emergencies Act. Right. So determining what compensation is for that is very difficult to do. And it's going to be up to the courts to decide if we get anything at all.
Right.
It's not up to me. I can make an ask, but sure, there's nobody who's going to tell me, yeah, that's what you're going to get. It'll be a judge who decides what is fair compensation based on the circumstance. So
fascinating.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So I didn't learn a whole lot about Tom Marazzo growing up.
Sorry,
I'm teasing.
We'll do used to fight a lot.
We'll do a part 2.
I sucked at school, and I used to get into fights all the time.
Yeah.
I did judo. I started judo when I was 7. I've done taekwondo. I've done some mixed martial arts, grappling, karate, a bit of jiu-jitsu too.
Yeah.
And but of all the stuff I ever did, Krav Maga.
Yeah.
That's my number one. Krav Maga was the thing that I was looking for my whole entire life. It's a real combative. It's meant for the streets.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. You know, you're not going to get into a street fight and start doing some kata.
Right.
Or something like that.
I love it. I was reading through your resume, brother, and as soon as I saw you were a black belt in Krav Maga, I said, I love this guy.
Yeah, and I love it. I haven't been able to train in quite a while.
Yeah.
I had a club for a short time before the pandemic, and I shut it down. Like the pandemic hadn't been here yet, but I shut it down for good reasons. Krav Maga, for some reason, attracts people that have a lot of former trauma in their life, and so they come to you. They don't ever want to be victimized again.
Oh, I see. Yeah, sure.
But unfortunately, it brings in the victimization that they suffered at the hands of somebody else. It brings it kind of into the club.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay.
And so it's I had a whole bunch of procedures in place in case, because it's a lot of reality-based training. Right? Mm-hmm. There's a lot of stuff you can get into in that training. You get triggered. So I had to have like procedures and everything set in place in case somebody did get triggered by the training that we were doing. Like we would do 5-on-1 fights as part of the final tests. I mean, there's a lot to it. But
right on.
Sorry, I'm just smiling because
that's crazy.
That is so much fun.
It is fun. It is fun. I've been in a fight before where it's like two guys at the same time,
yeah.
and I actually prefer that, believe it or not, to a one-on-one.
I've always said it's easier to fight 2 or more.
It is.
Because they're not like you're a single general.
Yeah.
And they're not.
Mm-hmm. It's better. I haven't been in a fight since.
Yeah, wait till the end of the podcast.
15 years.
In the snow.
I haven't been in a fight in about 15 years, and I'm happy with that.
Of course.
I don't want it.
Yeah.
There's a few people I'd love to smack every once in a while, especially on the 401.
That's hilarious.
100%.
Yeah. I like guitar.
Yeah.
I like software. I like construction. I love timber framing. I like skills. I like shooting, although Asha kicked my butt very decisively last year in Poland. We went to an indoor shooting range and I got my ass handed to me.
Oh, sweet.
And in bowling, she kicked my ass in bowling, but I won on pool. And
Well, the one reason I love this tabletop on top of my pool table is because my wife kicks my ass at pool.
yeah, like I'm not an overly complicated person. I've talked to Nolan about this many times, is that
We're back
Let's
to
talk about Nolan.
yeah.
Yeah.
He keeps creeping into this conversation.
Yeah.
Everything else other than food. I mean, I'm not eating monkey brain or animal testicles of any kind.
Certainly no bats.
No bats, but I don't like the idea of not trying something.
Yes.
Okay,
Andrew's like that.
Yeah, I want to try it before I determine whether I like it or not. But I think it's kind of a shame to not try something that you might fall in love with and really enjoy.
I agree.
Except I'm not going to try exotic foods. I'm not eating bugs. I don't care what Klaus Schwab says. Not eating bugs.
Don't even get us on the Klaus Schwab talk.
Oh,
Yeah.
This is part 2 coming up, brother.
Yeah, is there anything that like you do so many interviews and podcasts and things, and I'm sure you've talked a lot about all this stuff a gazillion times. Is there anything that you just wish someone would ask, or something that you want to just say? Anything at all? Because I want to hear it.
Well, if he wanted to mention that, Going Again podcast has been his most fun podcast to date, that's fine.
That's fine too.
I will say this. I'll say this. This is the very first podcast I've ever done in person. And I think this is way better. I think this is a winning formula. I think it's better for the guests. I think it's better for you guys. I think it's way better for the audience to see in-person stuff than, 2 people on Zoom or StreamYard. Like there's a staleness to that. And there's a lack of connection that I think the viewers, they perceive that there's this disconnect, and that's because you're electronically distanced. But in here, I think it's way better. I think this is
I
the
agree.
winning formula.
This is the show.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah,
and you get a parting gift of a mug.
I love that.
With your name on it.
Yes. Well, Veterans for Freedom came out with a mug too, and they put everybody had cool names. And they're like, you get Tom. Oh, thanks. Thanks. Tom. Or as, backwards, it'll be Mott. Thank you.
It was easy to fit on a mug.
Yeah, we did it on both sides because it works better on television. We don't know who's Cummings left or right-handed.
Yeah, really.
Yeah,
that's true.
Well, that's
you
true.
could have put Mott for the camera. I don't know. No, I wrote the book. That's the first time I've ever written a book before. Asha and I were co-authoring a fiction book together, loosely based on what we're seeing out in the world.
Oh, interesting.
We're putting this. It's strange because we have these pretty good conversations about where we want the book to go. It's a trilogy. Do you know about this Antonov aircraft?
I love that he starts off with 3 books.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a trilogy.
Yeah. So do you know this Antonov airplane?
I think
that
so.
The Canadian government confiscated from the Russians. It's
Yes.
sitting at Pearson right now.
Oh no.
Yeah. The book, if we do it right now, the working title is Trojan Wing. It's about that plane.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So we're trying to take in everything that's really going on in the world, weave it into a story because it's all connected.
Yeah.
It is.
It's all connected, believe it or not. And it's sickening and scary about how well it all meshes together.
Yeah.
Now, you said depopulation earlier.
Yeah.
And I'm still thinking, I'm going, yes, I agree with the depopulation, but it seems that is just one element
Tentacle,
Oh,
to what's next. Money feels like the deal, but
Did you guys watch the Tucker Carlson interview with Putin?
Yes.
yeah.
2 times he mentioned the golden billion. Look up the golden billion because I heard it twice. I heard it, and I posted it on Twitter, and people are like, "Yeah, I heard that too." And then there is an actual, I think, Wikipedia on what the golden billion is.
Okay.
We've always been assuming that the depopulation was to get down to 500 million, but somebody has to serve those 500 million. So, I thought it was really interesting that Vladimir Putin himself mentioned the golden billion because, we're hovering at just over 7 billion population worldwide. I always assumed that they were going to try to get down to 500 million. But it's going to, I mean, I think that's the goal. And there's something, I've heard many things. There's something about the land in Ukraine, that territory. And it's where the golden billion or maybe the $500 million are going to eventually end up. So
now there's like 1 million people out there as saying this conspiracy theorist, what the fuck. I love this shit. Sorry, I just want, just keep talking.
This is so serious. I want to make a joke, but oh my God.
yeah. Well,
Like, is it a traffic issue?
it must be. Well,
I had
drives
to
me
say
crazy.
it. Sorry.
Drives me
If
crazy.
that's it, then let's go.
Yeah, I'm all for driver re-education in this country. And if you're a foreign driver coming into Canada, you have to take this
big time.
driving education.
I was at the grocery store this morning. I met one.
Yeah, and for the love of God, get out of the left lane. That's for passing. It's not for you to have a nap. Okay,
What
get
about
out of the left
What
lane.
about me going to work in Toronto? It's a continuous pass.
That's that. If you can get a wide open lane, but good luck. You're always going to find somebody who's having a nap doing 80 or 90 in the far left lane. You're not passing. You're not passing. You're road raging.
And
I'm an
I just
expert.
want to say, speaking of books, my lovely wife, Rhonda Lee, just came out with her first novel entitled Effie. It's a love story.
Nice.
Has nothing to do with global
No, but
catastrophes, but we'll send a copy home.
I did think about it when he mentioned Amazon and getting the hardcover printed.
Yeah,
Everyone complained about the hardcover.
taking
Just
time
get
to
to
come.
Get the paperback because they're printed in the U.S. and
Takes for
Yeah,
takes
friggin'
forever.
ever.
Takes
Yeah.
forever. I mean, we've tried to order our authors' copies, and they're difficult for even us to get. So going out, like I didn't even bother sending hardcovers to Saskatchewan for the fundraiser. I knew they'd never get there.
right.
So yeah, it's not hardcover. I don't think I would have done again. I know a lot of people
Wow.
like that, but I don't think it's. People on social media have said, "Look, I ordered this thing back in September, and I still haven't got it."
Yeah, Rhonda's getting the same.
Well, the thing about your book is that it may be a collector's item someday to Canadians. I mean, for real, man. What you have done and what you're involved in, and all this literature, speaks huge for Canada.
This is history.
Yeah.
In the making right now.
A lot of people have mentioned that, and I'm very grateful that I do get to contribute to the body of knowledge of Canadian history. I feel good about that. I just wish more Canadians would read books again.
Well, that's a thing.
Because not a lot of people read books in Canada. Their attention span's too short right now. So we were like, okay, let's go to audiobook and stuff. And we were joking yesterday, like, do like Derek Smith. Derek Smith wrote the cartoon book, The Prime Minister Who Stole Freedom.
Right.
And it came out during the actual convoy. He sold massive amounts of this book, right? But it's funny. It's entertaining. It's a cartoon book. It's really, it's good. But for more serious things, I think people are, one, they're economically stressed. They don't want to spend $24 on a book. Two,
That's the truth.
people are kind of tired and overwhelmed. And to sit down and read, I've got about 5 books at home right now that are on my shelf waiting for me to read them. Right. And even I can't break down and read a book right now. My mind is too full of crap. But a lot of people who have read the book said like they've didn't put it down. They've read it in a day or two. And that's when I know that it's a good book. Like I've been able to write it from my perspective. I am very proud of this book. I'm not a writer. I'm not trained in writing. I went through high school and had to take English class, which I think I failed twice. So, I'm proud of the book because I had very specific objectives when I started. And I often describe it like if there was a GoPro on my head, that was the perspective of the book. I only wrote about what I saw. But then I went to the commission and I realized it's just not going to tell the complete story. I had to write about what I participated in and also what I heard the police say and the government say during the commission. And there's some controversial things that happened at the convoy. I was the one who was pushing very hard to get the trucks onto Wellington. And the more trucks on Wellington, the better. I didn't care where they came from. I just wanted all the trucks I could squeeze right there on Justin Trudeau's doorstep. And that became a very controversial item months later, because people felt like, oh, you put them all lined up so that the police could kettle them and sweep through and arrest everybody. And, you know, I've heard this argument many times, and it's from amateurs who don't understand the difference between strategic, operational, and tactical level things that you're trying to do. Tactical level is boots on the ground. This is when the army or the police, this is the violence level. This is where the fighting actually happens, at the tactical level. Strategic level, you're talking about influencing the entire government, the whole of Canada. That's not where violence happens at the strategic level. And for all the amateurs out there that say that, you know, I was a fool, I betrayed the convoy because I was kettling them on purpose in Wellington so the police could sweep through. These people don't understand that the convoy itself was there for a strategic purpose. They weren't there for a tactical reason. They didn't show up with weapons. They didn't show up with barriers.
Yeah, hence the peaceful thing that it was.
Yes, it was a peaceful, charter guaranteed protest in the city of Ottawa. It was a strategic event with strategic implications if we succeeded. It was not a tactical kinetic energy battle. And so for the people out there that are running around saying that me and Keith and all these people sabotage the convoy, they're fools. And what they're doing is they're actually sowing a lot of anger and divisive language to try to somehow monetize it. They're trying to make money off of vilifying the convoy. And these are insiders. These are some of the insiders that, you know, were there on the first day that started the convoy. And they're attacking a lot of other people out there. And they never consider the harm to the morale that it does to the Canadian public who supported the convoy. They don't understand what people were trying to achieve. You know, Chris, Tamara, the lawyers I was with, and other very affluent, influential people that were at the convoy all agreed with this strategy. You know, get the trucks up onto Wellington. That's where we had to be. Get them out of the residential areas so that the people living in those areas can just go about their lives. Our beef was with the government, not the residents. Mm-hmm. And so there's this little camp out there that are constantly trying to rip apart the legacy of the convoy. And I do write about that. I had to. I felt like it was an important part of the story that, yes, the convoy, it looked on the outside that it was very well organized. And in a lot of aspects, it really was, like, even shocking to me. But there was a time where we really had to get the ball marching down the field. And that involves strategy. And a lot of people just don't understand what we were trying to accomplish. And I even talk about, Keith Wilson wrote a document called Roadmap to Freedom. And I write about that in the book. And the reason I put that in the book, one, because it was about the convoy, is about us. But I viewed that as one of the biggest lessons learned for future protesters, German farmers, Dutch farmers, everybody in Europe right now that's protesting. I wanted them to look at the book and say, there's a lot of useful nuggets in here that we could use over here. Even though we're European, there's a lot of good stuff in there that we could learn from and use that in our cause over here. The constant theme in the book is also safe and responsible. That was true from the moment I arrived. We had to be safe and responsible. And so, you know, we're seeing in Europe right now, they're scattering manure and stuff like that. They're doing things that I'm not there, so I can't fully appreciate, you know, what they're thinking. Or
causing
what
a bit of a shit show.
Yeah. But there are things that gain you support in the eyes of the public, and there are things that take it away.
Right.
And it's vital that you get public support. And, you know, look at what we were up against in the media. The media was never going to support us. They were never going to allow our public support to grow. They were going to do everything to make sure that it contracted. And so when you do stupid things, you win stupid prizes. And so what we were trying to do is always be safe and responsible at the convoy. But we were always trying to put the pressure where it belonged, at the federal government level, not on the people of Ottawa. But it's all in the book.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
So,
And just before you go, if people wanted to contribute, are there several sources, like several places, or is there one main?
right now it is the accountabilityproject.ca is a big fundraiser. It's a give, send, go. And
Okay.
don't worry, you're not getting your bank accounts frozen if you contribute to a crowdfunding thing. There's the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms.
Okay.
They do fundraising. And then just various other organizations. So veteransforfreedom.ca. We have a monthly fund. You can pay $5 a month, and halfway through the month, you'll be given 3 options of 3 different causes that you want to see the money go to at the end of the month.
Okay.
So I contribute. I'm a member, and I contribute $5 a month. And when you buy the book off of Veterans for Freedom website, I donate $5 to V4F.
Nice.
That money every month goes into a big pot, and all the donors vote. So the majority rules. If they all vote on a certain cause, that's where the money goes for the month.
Oh, wow.
So we've been doing that, I think, at least 6 months. Veterans for Freedom to date. So they were formed in March, just after the convoy. So it'll be 2 years next month. They've raised over $223,000 in donations, and they've donated all of it. Like Drew, none of the V4F leadership claim any of that money. They don't take it. They don't use it. It's a nonprofit.
Sweet.
And they donate all that money back to not just veteran causes, but also to community causes. There's a lot of things that V4F does in the community that's not advertised. Veterans do go to national war monuments within their hometowns. They spend the day cleaning the monuments, cleaning the sidewalks, de-weeding, doing all this stuff. We're very active in the communities. Myself, I stepped down from the board only because I couldn't give them the attention that they deserved. So they asked me, who could replace you? And I said right away, Major retired Jill Younghusband. So she took my spot, stepped up, and she's from out west. So we've got 3,000 members in Veterans for Freedom, and they've been around 2 years.
Nice.
Yeah.
Wow. Sweet. Tom, before you go, we would love for you to sign our table.
Yeah.
If you're into it.
For sure.
You can even draw a picture, as you can see.
Yeah.
Here, choose something.
Whatever you want.
Choose something
All right.
clear.
Is that right here?
Sure.
Truth is easy. Fucking A.
Just have to tell it.
Thanks, Tom.
Yeah, thank you, Tom. And
I'm going to leave this book for you guys too.
Oh.
But I want to sign it before
Yes,
I go.
please.
please. And while you're doing that, I'm just going to give a shout out to my friend Deanna MacArthur, who was a huge contributor in terms of food and way more than I can even explain when it came to the Freedom Convoy. She used to help us here on the podcast, and she's a huge fan of just,
Yeah.
all that went on. So whatever, TUD.
And once more, shout out to Nolan.
Yes. I can't forget Nolan. You know how I got to him? I was doing background because I was in school and my daughter was born and it was daycare time, and I couldn't afford my share of the daycare. So I was at my old reserve unit, and I saw a buddy of mine. I was doing teaching them pistol disarming. We get talking in the mess, and he's like, "Oh, if you need extra money, you should go do this background crap. There's a Facebook group." I'm like, "All right, sure." Next thing you know, 2 weeks later, I'm standing beside Matt Damon.
Oh, yeah.
And horrible movie.
Matt Damon was doing BG?
Yeah, exactly. It was a terrible movie. It was downsizing. in Toronto. I hated it. And so I'm like, all right, this is kind of convenient, but it's minimum wage and I'm working 16, 18 hours a day. And every time I would go to set, they're like, you, come here. I'm like, oh, you're going to be a cop, or you're going to be an army guy, or you're going to be something in that thing. I'm like, oh, geez. So I ended up being on a show, and then I start helping them with like technical advising. Like a guy walked out one day, he has a colonel rank and a general rank on his uniform. I'm like, turn around, go back in and deal with that, right?
That's hilarious.
So next thing, like then I got the crew calling me at home saying, listen, we got questions. I'm like, okay, good. Like you call me. Like I'm not going to scream at my TV show or TV set if I have the ability right now to fix this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right on.
Because these guys work hard. I mean, the background, these guys work
Sure
like
they do.
dogs.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I thought, you know what, they work at, like, they pay attention to such detail. I'm going to help out with that. Because if I don't, then I don't have the right to bitch at my TV. So anyway, I'm with this agent and I'm like, listen, man, don't book me for any more shows unless it's SSE, if it's military or police. And he's like, look, if I book you as a janitor and they re-roll you, I can't do anything about that. I said, fair enough. I let that contract go with that guy. And then there was a woman named Zamarit. I don't know.
I know the name. Yes.
Yeah. So she was booking me on shows for cash, non-union. And that contract expired. And then I went to her. I said, hey, do you know anyone who just does SSE? Because I feel like I'm kind of giving away, my time for not very good money. And she's like, yeah, I know a guy. He's just starting up his company, FC Talent. His name's Nolan. So I get a hold of him and I started working for him right away. And that's how I got on with Adam too.
Wicked.
Cool, man.
And yeah, the only time I ever work is if it's SSE, and if it involves a gun, then I get hired and I go and.
Are you full member now?
No, because to do SSE, I don't have to be ACTRA, right? So
do you want to be ACTRA?
it's too many hours. Like, what is it, 1,600 hours, and then it's like a 15. Like, I heard there's a big fee, like a few $1,000s.
Oh no. We'll talk about it after.
Okay, yeah, because I'd rather do it for the. But I'm not an actor, right? Like,
it's all good.
I'm not an actor.
100%.
Nor do I aspire to be, because I think that's a hard life, to be honest, being an actor.
Yeah.
But I like doing. Yeah.
You're doing background.
Yeah.
I know. You really fall, right? You fall from grace, man. No, I like it. It's fun sometimes. I'll admit it's a little frustrating being a background guy, because the movie people have an idea of what they want to see on camera, and it's like, I would never do that in reality.
100%.
I would never do that. And you got to just. I remember once I almost shit on a guy on set because he was wearing his army hat over here and his shirt untucked, and I was like, I'm playing pretend here. What are you doing? This isn't real.
Yeah.
Well, I was on a show recently. This isn't really the first time that this happened, but there are demons or monsters or something coming around a corner of a hall that's got to be 200 yards long, and we're running at them with our guns.
Yeah.
Why the fuck are we running toward them when we have guns? I just don't get it. But I'm there and I'm getting paid. So
yeah. Last time I worked, I was literally pointing my airsoft AR-15 at a concrete wall.
Yeah.
I'm like, whatever you say, man. You're paying the bill. You're paying the bill. Yeah.
That's hilarious,
man.
For anyone listening on Spotify or Apple, that's Thomas Penn signing his book to Andrew and I. You can get one. Amazon.ca.
Sorry, the way that sounded, it was like I was watching an episode of Mutual of Omaha.
Yeah.
As the cheetah sneaks up on its
Oh
prey.
my God.
It was really good. Play by play. It was good. You got that voice. You
Thanks.
can do that.
I'm available for voiceover work.
Thank you, Tom.
Thanks again, Tom. Appreciate it so much.
Yeah,
man.
It was fun. It's good.
Pleasure
to do it
meeting
live.
Yeah, this was such a pleasure to meet you. This was fucking awesome. Thank you.
Awesome.
All right. On that, cut it, B.